Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
As with our previous meetings, rules of decorum are in effect. At this point in time, I'd like to open the floor for citizen comments. We do have one sheet submitted. Mr. Shawnee.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. I think it's appropriate to remember Tracy Gaines, Rockwall police officer that we lost, and I beg of the city and the people of our city to remember and to honor our officers in uniform. The Gaines family obviously is dealing with a lot of pain, and so obviously we want to continue lifting them up in prayer. Mr. Mayor, one of the things that you have on the agenda tonight is to approve, the only thing on the agenda tonight is to approve the Project Management Consultation Service Contract. I'm curious, I'm bothered by the fact that there's no competitive bids, and as a free market conservative, I believe competition is a good thing. And I believe that should have taken place. There was no request for proposals. I've done an open records request, and that was refused. Am I incorrect that there was no competitive bids? If I am, then I will withdraw what I just said. There were other proposals submitted. There were. Okay. Well, I never received. Okay. I did an open records request. Okay. All right. Then I stand corrected. There were competitive bids. my open records request has not been met. That's why I was misunderstood that. So forgive me for that. Thank you for having competitive bids, and I applaud you for that process. So we'll move on. Thank you. In a couple of weeks, possibly before next week, depending on if you have it on your agenda, it'll either be next Monday or a week from Monday, I'll be having a show that'll focus on all of the fire calls that have gone through the city of McLendon-Chisholm over the last 7 years. And I'm going to go in depth on those and to compare them inside versus outside and what kind of calls we're talking about. And I beg of you to watch, and I will provide you with information, empirical information that you can look at for yourself to see for yourself, especially as you're considering building a fire station and as you're considering planning for growth. Finally,
excuse me, what was the second part of your sentence? I didn't hear you.
Especially, and as you're planning for growth, as you're doing your long range, the comprehensive plan.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. I just didn't hear you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important for you to know. And you're not going to find that information anywhere. I happen to be collecting all of that over the last 7 years, so I hope that's helpful to you. Finally. I don't know if you're aware, but yesterday Mayor Jim Pruitt and I met. As you may or may not be aware, the 4,000 acres that I have been so vilified about for giving away to the city of Rockwall, the city of Rockwall is giving it back. They do not want it. And you will have 2 weeks, literally, to make a decision on whether or not you want it. Last night at their city council meeting, they voted to give it back to the county, and they're going to have a second reading of that in 2 weeks. At that second reading, they're going to make that decision to finally give that away. Nathan, you were part of that whole conversation. A lot of it was an executive session. We hired a property attorney who understood that issue, and we became enlightened, and we got a big education. And I realized the other three have not benefited from from what Nathan and I sat through. And it became it became obvious that the best thing for our city to do was to give it to the city of Rockwall. Just so you know, no apartments are going to go in there. Even now, the plan is for no apartments. However, the MUD district is going to move forward. So there will be a MUD district. The question for you as a council is, do you want that? Do you want to bring this into the city? And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to completely compromise on the standards of our city. You're going to have to say, okay, we're going to walk away from the 1.5 acre minimum per home site standard. Why? Because D.R. Horton's plan is to build a massive development of tract homes, very small, on very small footprints. D.R. Horton is a home builder. They're not a townhome builder. They're not an apartment builder. So they are going to, the entire 4,000 acres, it appears, is going to be tract homes. The question is, do you want them inside your city? The benefit of that, tax dollars. The drawback for them is they're not only going to be paying a MUD tax, they're also going to be paying city tax. That sounds good on the face. But as you look closer, consider not taking it. And the reason I would say don't take it is because Chief Simmons is going to have an opportunity that the city has never had before. And that opportunity is the MUD district has to provide fire service. Thank you. The MUD district has to provide fire service. Well, City of Rockwall is not going to do it. That's why one of the reasons they're getting rid of it is because they don't want to have to provide that. And so I asked the simple question, can we name our price? And the answer is yes. So one of my biggest criticisms about the new fire department is how are we going to pay for all of the growth and everything you're trying to do? Keep that in mind over the next 2 weeks as you guys start talking about this 4,000 acres, because this is one of the issues that's going to come into play. Obviously, this is important for you to understand, and you're not going to have a lot of time to get educated about it. So the couple of questions is, can you even take that 4,000 acres back? As Jim and I talked about it, I'm not sure you can, but if you could, I don't know why you would. it would be a huge obligation to the city, and the tax benefit is a zero-sum game at the end. If you contracted it out, like we should be doing for the unincorporated area, it may be a good benefit to the city. So I hope this is helpful information. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments this evening? Okay, I'm going to close citizens' comments for tonight. So items up for consideration this evening, item 5.1, discussion and action regarding approving the contract with AGCM for project management, consulting services as related to the fire station project. As you, council may remember, the last meeting we had a lot of discussions on it. There was a couple of details that we needed to get Mr. Holland. Have you heard from Paul at all on that, or Shelley, have you heard, since he's not here this evening?
My understanding that AGCM and Holland have agreed to the changes and have implemented the changes that were requested.
Good evening, Council. I'm Ryan Roseborough with AGCM Project Management. We did have some conversations with your attorney over the past week, and he had a couple of tweaks he wanted us to make in the contract, and they were very minor. So we made the tweaks with no objection whatsoever and resubmitted it for City Council consideration.
So at this point, do I hear a motion to approve the contract with AGCM for consulting services as related to the fire station project?
Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion to approve the contract with AGCM for project management and consulting services as related to the fire station project, and further direct city staff to put on the next agenda to formalize the process on how the city is going to oversee the project with the contractor. And additionally, I'd like to direct staff to make no further decisions, meetings, or progress on the new fire station until after the next council meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion at all?
Yeah, I think what we want to make sure that the new project manager has had the opportunity to look at the RFQs that were in place, and kind of what was alluded to at the last meeting, there may be other firms out there that should have had submitted a bid and did not. So I think we just wanted to make sure that we thoroughly involved the new company in the process.
Okay. Mr. Donnelly, comments also?
No, sir. Sounds fine.
Okay. So all of those in favor of, you gonna read that again? Gotcha. All those in favor of approving the contract with AGCM for project management consulting services as related to the fire project, and further direct city staff to put on the next meeting agenda to formalize the process on how the city is going to oversee the project with the contractor. Additionally, I'd like to make no further decisions until that meeting is held.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. No decisions have been made without council's approval, so I'm kind of confused on decision-making that is being stated here.
Well, I kind of have that wrong.
And we can agree to disagree.
That's okay, and I'm going to explain to you why. When I have been asking to be a part of the decision-making since Mr. Larkin left, and you guys have made decisions since then, you've met, made decisions on where the firehouse is going to go, you've not included me in anything, on any meeting whatsoever.
Correct. You weren't assigned to be a part of any type of committee, ma'am. So if I include you, I have to include all of council all the time.
But again, you stated that we, as a council, decided, did we make that decision on where it was going to go?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
But we didn't get any other choices.
You had multiple choices, ma'am, and it's all been logged in a format so you can see everything that's happened. So this is confusing to me because council has been a part of every decision that's been made on this process. I have not made any decisions without council approval. So it's confusing now that everybody's forgot about what's been done, and now it's being put on us that we've done something wrong. Disagree with that completely.
I don't think it's that you've done something wrong. We want to make sure primarily that AGCM has, now that we have this resource that we didn't have in the past, that they are included in the decision-making process.
Absolutely.
And I think we just want to put the train on stall for a second. We're not stopping the process, but we just want to make sure that we're adequately including them in the discussion. Y'all put together the RFQ. We didn't put together that. We don't, that's not our job. That was your job.
Exactly. You're absolutely correct.
But if we would have had the owner's rep online at the beginning, we would have been able to have assistance in that RFQ process. So I think it's just time to make sure that we understand who's to keep them in the loop. And I think by having it on the agenda next week is not going to derail the process at all.
No, and I don't disagree with that, but I do have an issue with the statement made by Councilwoman Wisner that they haven't been involved. She was never assigned to be a part of any committee or team. The city staff have been directed to move forward with this process, and we have.
Why would you
So-
tell me yes on the conclusion of all the meetings?
I'm not going to track you down, man.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Track you down.
I'd suggest that be an executive session item next time. That particular part of it.
So why don't we have that discussion in executive session? Is that okay? So Lisa, as far as we can't do that today, we have to do that at our next meeting.
No, Mayor Pro Tem, it has to be posted on the agenda.
Yeah, that's why.
We don't have legal counsel tonight, so
Right.
we're not going to be able to go into like executive session for that. Now, I think it's close enough to talking about the contract, and if you want to invite. Look at it. He may have some comments for you, because I know he's been following it closely since he submitted it.
Yes, I think that's why we thought we could put him on the agenda next week.
I know that we don't have a forum for the 11th, and so it have to be part of a special meeting, I guess we can include it.
Well, we have to change the meeting on the 11th because of my absence and Councilmember Wessner's absence. So, I think that's what we're suggesting. Sure.
We put in our RFQ that we would score these within 30 days. Are we going to put ourselves, score them within 30 days?
Potentially, yes, ma'am. It opens the door for them when you come back in to negotiate. It opens the door for them to change the terms in the RFQ. So I can tell council a little bit of what we've done to be proactive, assuming we made the assumption that our contract would be approved. So we kind of started the process on our end a little bit. Our architect, we've gone through the RFQ that was issued by the city, which it's a good RFQ. It's meets all the Texas government code requirements for design build standards in an RFQ. So it checks all the boxes there, and you had very good competition based on the list we saw of people that responded. So if you had 4, 5, 6 people that responded, on our end we would say there was something they didn't like about that RFQ, but you had a lot of responses. So that tells us it was a good RFQ and there's a lot of interest. So based on those things, we've got our team, we've put an RFQ score sheet together already on our side, and as soon as council says go on our contract, we're ready to turn loose with getting those RFQs from the city and reviewing them in detail. And our plan was to have scoring done on these RFQs by Thursday or Friday of this week.
What is the deadline for the 30 days?
We're right at it right now, I think Thursday.
I think so.
It was submitted on the 6th. Last 6th. I can see to start the process completely over, not to issue it again and allow
Correct, yeah,
Slowing
yeah.
down, and the construction prices are changing all the time, and
Right.
take us slow the entire project down.
So-
That's my concern.
So the way the process would work on our end is as soon as we go through, again, in accordance with government code, we go through and evaluate those RFQ responses, and we would come back to council with the committee's recommendation on ranking. And so that ranking then would be delivered to you all with the appropriate scoring of who ranked. And we're not going to, rank 1 through 18 or 1 through 16. We'll rank usually the top 3 or 4. Then we'll bring those back to council for consideration. And if council says, yes, the process looks like it was a good process, you followed government code, you followed all the, you checked all the boxes and did what you're supposed to do, then you approve that ranking. That allows then the city to begin negotiations with the number 1 ranked. If you can't come to a negotiation, then you jump down to the number 2. But that would allow us to keep moving forward. And I think on our end, we've got the horsepower on standby, ready to review those RFQs. So we can turn it around really fast. We've got the score sheet done. We understand all the criteria in the RFQ. So we're ready to go.
Aren't we going to be blowing the timetable anyway if it was on the 6th and the 6th is on Thursday? We're going to have blown that timetable because the earliest it could get to council would be that next meeting.
I think we said we'd have them ranked, but I don't think we said we'd make a decision, but I think we could at least put down that we had ranked them at that point, and then we could bring that forward. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's always, that's a little bit of a gray area, but I'll tell you that if you blow that timetable by a day or two, the way the market is right now with COVID and everything, contractors they're hungry. They want to get things in the pipeline. Nobody's really going to balk at it. If you pushed it back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, then I think people are going to say, what's going to happen in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month with the supply chain, with the COVID thing? Are we going to have another outbreak? So the further out you go, the more uncertainty there is. A day or two, I think you're fine.
I think we did, but in fact, I know we did. There is a phrase in that RFQ that says they're down for 45 days.
I thought 45 was what I remembered seeing. Yeah, 45 jumped out at me.
So then we would be okay. In 45 days, we'd be all right, because that gives us 15 more days or 17 more days. If
Well-
we have a council meeting on the 13th or 14th.
Yeah, as I said, we're fully prepared on our end to be able to come back to finish the evals, and they wouldn't be rushed. We have
And I'd
the,
like to ask Councilmember Westner what your opinion is. What do you think?
I personally would just like to sit down with the Pastor Company and council and, like you said, just get an idea. There's a few of us that need missing, so, or, this is just me. And sit down and just kind of chat with you and kind of get an idea of where you're at. But I guess if he's not here and we can't do it tonight, we'll need to next week. The next meeting.
well, again, just purely my recommendation as a pure third party, and I haven't been here, obviously, at the city, so I don't know all the behind-the-scenes things that have happened to get to where you are. But again, I do know that we're at kind of a critical place in the market because, again, we know where we are today, but we don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. So we're telling all of our clients, if you have projects that are out right now, we need to get everything inked, we need to get everything contracted, and we need to get things moving because things are changing day by day. So, if council is comfortable with it, what I would suggest is allow us to come back next week after we've reviewed those RFQs in detail, allow us to come back with a proposed ranking, and we can walk you through the process of how we ranked them. And if you're comfortable with that ranking, allow us to move into negotiations with the number 1 ranked. And if you have questions, of course, we can answer them at that time. And again, I've told you all before, I think transparency is a big deal for us. So I have no issue whatsoever providing 100% transparency.
So you can get your rankings done with them before next week?
We can.
We had asked if everyone, well, if Chief and I, and if you as the liaison were available Thursday. I think Thursday was good for you. If we could come together and sit for probably a good portion of that day and rank them. I know we've been looking at them individually, and they just are now going to have access to all of them. But we were kind of hoping we could knock that out Thursday, and then we bring it back at the next meeting, like you suggested.
You're just a liaison now, so now I think you can plug in and be a lot more active in that.
Thursday,
That's what was it, 8 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock.
We have a motion and we have a second on it.
No, let's
We're discussing
let's
other
get back
business.
to our,
So
let's
if
get
we
back
could-
to our motion, and are we going to approve tonight's contract, and then let's get through that, and then we can kind of discuss Thursday's meeting. So, is there any further discussion on the
Just wanted to caution that I think once you close it out and vote on it.
So the way the agenda, so to recap, the way we're asking is that, yes, approve AGCM to hold it, have it as an item on the next council meeting, which it will be because you're going to have AGCM here to go over the proposal. And what was the other?
will you read it?
Now, it's going to have to change, though, I guess.
Well, we'll then have to,
Just say that first part. I think that's the.
Do you mean just say the very first part? Before we address those rankings, and then we can do that in executive.
I mean, is that something that we would do in executive session with Ryan as far as discussions with the number one ranking?
You would have to, I mean, I think out here, you would want to openly talk about the rankings, the top rankings, and where those are, and then talk about the process of going forward with negotiations. I think that,
yes,
but if you had additional questions about working with your company,
then
you
we,
could do that either way in executive or here.
I think the executive for the second section would be beneficial to us.
You could do the executive first, and we can come out here with versus the 45 days. So instead of SOPs were I was referring to was that whatever they proposed was, it was kind of their work, would give them 45 days. If something may change within their own companies, so the 18 that submitted, and after 45 days, they might be able to say, hey, that's no good anymore, it's way too long. Something's changed. The 30 days was kind of our commitment in that RFP to have them score within that time period. So I think I can use on that point.
Do we need to, back to this Thursday appointment, is that something that we need to finalize now?
I think Chief and Councilmember and Brian and I can probably work out that time and then I can't do it on Thursday. Just call me when I make a suggestion. Yeah, so either time we, I'm sorry, my daughter has to go to work off, so I don't know.
I'll tell you, we work, and I mean this literally, we work 24/7. We're at, so, yeah.
Any availability?
Set to look at it.
All right.
I think the Friday over here is
Okay. So again, we have a motion on the floor. Let's get back to that. Correct? Was it seconded?
I seconded it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Hang on, Mayor Pro Tem, the amended motion wasn't seconded yet.
I'll second.
You're going to second?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We have the amended motion seconded. Any further discussion now? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 None opposed, unanimous decision. Thank you, sir. Thank you all very much.
Look forward to coordinating a meeting time, and we'll get that on the calendar. Thank you, I appreciate it.
So again, at this point, we'll adjourn our special meeting and open up our work session. Call it to order. Item 7.1, discuss fiscal year 2021 proposed budget, tax rate, and related matters. So let me adjourn our special meeting at 6:54, and then again, we're going to open our work session at 6:54.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like me to begin and then?
Yes, please.
Okay, just to kind of show you how I've set it up. So I did a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is not hard and fast. It's mostly just meant to make sure we addressed everything by the end of the evening that needed to be addressed. So we can certainly change the order of things. Shelley, you want to go to the next slide for me? Okay, so the way I looked at it tonight, all things are on the table as far as budget and tax rate related. So we worded the agenda pretty broadly that you can talk about anything that's related to those things. From my viewpoint, as for what I need from council to kind of finalize the budget and kind of get things moving forward, is to determine council funding priorities. There are some things that we kind of left in question. Add, remove, adjust line items. It looked like we had some requests from council members to go line by line. So we're prepared to do that this evening. Ray Smith is your city accountant, and he's here, and I'm going to ask him to come up and join me at the table here. We'll try to keep 6 feet apart. It might be hard, but we'll do our best. And he can answer questions as far as how things are calculated, anything about the tax rate. He could probably, anything that's related to number-wise, he can handle that part of it. I can help you with process and that sort of thing. So we thought we would just kind of go line by line. So if you want to kind of pull that budget worksheet up in your packets. And while you're doing that, Shelley, if you'll go to the next slide while they're getting that ready. There are things in the budget that to even start the budget, we kind of have to make some assumptions just to have a beginning point. So I just thought I'd kind of briefly, while you're getting ready to go line by line, talk about the assumptions real quick. Can you go to the next one? Okay, so the worksheet that you have in your packet.
Is this in the agenda packet?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
No, the PowerPoint is not. The worksheet is. So the budget that you have in there, it assumes a 15-cent tax rate. 15 cents is what you have currently. It assumes that the SAFER grant's dropping off. It's going from $252,000 to $117,000. So that's already built into this budget worksheet. It assumes the new code enforcement full-time position. These are things that you can change as you go through the worksheet tonight. I'm just kind of telling you what's in there to start with, so you kind of know where we're starting from. So you could choose to keep it as it is, go part-time, eliminate it, whatever you'd like to do. We did build in the full-service animal control contract that was approved at the last meeting. So we did build that in. This does cover the new fire command vehicle, and that assumes that you're keeping the full-time code enforcement position because that vehicle, the current vehicle, would be repurposed for code officer, and then chief would take the new vehicle. It's also assumed that there would be 3 to 5% salary merit increases and an increase to the TMRS contribution, retirement contribution. So on the salary increases, I'll just make the point, just so you know going into it, that doesn't mean everybody's going to get a 3 to 5% raise. It means that we built the funds in the budget so that can happen. So council appointees, which include myself, fire chief, Shelley, that's yours to decide at the time you do our evaluations whether or not we're due a raise or not. That's completely up to you all. Firefighters, if chief is evaluating them, he would decide on that merit increase. But we built it in for everyone just because it would be difficult at this time to go and figure out who exactly is going to get a raise or not. So we built, I think the average was 4%. We built that into the budget. Ray, jump in and correct me if I'm miss anything here. We talked about doing an updated comprehensive plan, so we built those funds into the budget based off Mr. Coker's, what he suggested would be for a full redo of the comprehensive plan. We built in normal projected costs for any increases to just operating costs. So if we have a contract, say, for example, with Infomark, I think it's built in that it goes up 3% a year. So we looked at all the contracts, we saw, what needs to just kind of go up just because it's scheduled to go up. Other things were based on our best estimates for, whether it was insurance costs or workers' comp or what have you. We built in our best estimates for that. So there are placeholders in the budget for IT updates. So we talked about those. I had Ray put in a line for it, but I didn't put in any money in there. So for a placeholder, you'd have to either say take it away completely, give me a number for it. That's kind of what we're looking for tonight. So that would include updates to the chamber to make this technology work better in here, laptops. I think was there a line for sewer, possibly a contribution from the city for the sewer line? Okay. I know we talked about it. I couldn't remember if we put it in or not. So those are kind of things that are not assumed in the budget that we just went ahead and put kind of empty spaces for. So just so you kind of know how we're looking at it. Okay. The next page here is just kind of a general overview of the budget. And Ray, would you mind kind of maybe just kind of going over the budget summary? This kind of talks about the current budget as approved and the expected surplus that we thought we were going to have at the beginning of the year, the projected fiscal year in now based on how the year's gone so far, and what's proposed. Do you want to kind of give a real brief summary?
So these are broad categories of general fund revenue, general fund expenses, and the difference obviously being the surplus. Again, as Lisa said, that the proposed 2021 budget is the current 15-cent rate applied with the just released certified values. So if you kept your rate where it is now, that would be the revenue generated would be that number. We already know what RCAD has issued for the certified value. So it's no longer an estimate. We know that number. Okay. And as you can see that the current budget is approved, the revenue was $1.3 million. The projected revenue by the end of this current year is going to be $2.2 million. So 900,000 more in revenue than we budgeted. Then the proposed budget, and this is 1.8, and as it has been the custom of previous budgets, we always take a conservative estimate based upon what the revenue will be. So we don't try to assume that we will repeat the projection in the current year. That doesn't mean that you won't, but again, as a budget, which is simply your tool to manage the city's resources, we take a conservative view on the revenue, and then we take a progressive view of the expenses. So in other words, revenue we're trying to underestimate, and on the expenses we're trying to really nail down what we believe the expenses will be, so that your surplus would be sort of a worst case scenario. The only thing where we're not taking a conservative view is the property tax revenue, because we know what that certified value is, and we know currently that your rate is 15 cents. I can tell you that that rate is under the new Senate Bill 2 calculations. So the voter approval rate, which is what you can adopt without any issue, is more than the 15 cents. So looking at the surplus line, we had budgeted a $253,000 surplus. We're projecting that surplus to come in at $956,000, and we're budgeting a $500,000 surplus for fiscal 2021.
And I do want council to jump in on the worksheet in a minute, but I do want to address that $514,000 in surplus, because I know it sounds like a lot of money, and why would we want to generate that much more? But in the big picture of things and thinking about future years, it's really not all that much more. So due to caps on the tax increases, we can't make up a huge difference anymore in 1 year without going into a situation where we could end up in a rollback election. So due to that, we kind of can't think about the budget from just 1 year to the next year anymore. You really have to think about it a year or 2 or 3 or even 5 out about where the city is headed. So just a couple of things. These are just things I'd like you to think about as we're going through the budget when you're looking at that big number. For the following fiscal year, 21-22, the Safer Work grant goes away altogether, and that's going to be another $117,000 that we'll have to generate, and we can't possibly do that in 1 year with a 3.5% increase in taxes. So even though it looks like we're ahead of the game, and we are, coming in with that $514,000 in surplus, we kind of have to stay ahead of the game the way the tax rules go now. So that's why that's one of the reasons why that's built in there. Another reason is Chief had talked about needing a fire apparatus. I don't think we've decided on what kind or when exactly, but I think over the course of this budget year, he'd kind of like to start planning that out for the following year. Those trucks are about, well, they vary, but it could be $950,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. We put $350,000 away during the last fiscal year. We're going to have, fortunately, a good bit of surplus this year that we could add to that if council wants to do that when we get towards September. So that's great. But then we have to start thinking about, oh, great, we've funded this one, but now they're, a year or two down the road, capital replacement, you have to think about what's next to replace. So we kind of want it to stay ahead of the game on some of those. And then by putting that money away, then we don't have to think about taking out municipal loans to get those vehicles in the future. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. So as you're going through and you're thinking that's a huge amount of surplus, that we've thought of that too, but there are things that are maybe not that far away, a year away, 2 years away, that we're kind of accounting for. And Ray, let me know if I've said that correctly or if there's something you want to add.
Well, the only thing that I would add to that is that without a true 5-year financial plan or a 10-year financial plan, it's difficult to say that any surplus is too high or too low. It may look one way today, but if we have the benefit of a 5-year look ahead or a 10-year look ahead, your answer might be different. And again, it's difficult to say whether that's enough, too little, or too much without having some sort of projections for more than just 1 year out, which is the way that the city is typically operated. They budget 1 year at a time, and they're not looking ahead at year 2 or 3 or 4 with any great amount of detail. So I can only add that it would be difficult, for me as a third party to say, is that enough, too little, or too much, because you really can't evaluate that just on an annual basis.
We've had such a bonus, a boom in construction for our general fund revenue this year. I predict that we won't have that boom next year because of the COVID situation, and families will be in a
situation where they're not going to be able to buy houses like they are now. I think that construction in Sonoma Verde is going to slow down.
That's possible. Right now, the developer is very optimistic, and we have good numbers for next year, and we've actually increased what our projections are for next year. So we've kind of adjusted that number maybe from the last time you saw your worksheet, and went ahead and put in, maybe not as much as this year is what we've received or what we project to receive for revenue, but definitely more than what we did this year. I think we're closer. So we're hoping that, but like you said, we just don't know. I mean, the economy could tank, and who knows?
The only other thing that I can add, just for what it's worth, we're projecting that the general fund reserve will be about 1.4 million by the end of the year. And again, one fire engine is going to take up a big bite of that if you didn't want to look at any debt. The other thing that's part of our practice is that we see a lot of financial statements from other cities, and part of the advising work that we do, and we look at their financial reports. And if you look at the amount of reserves that they carry per population, or the amount of reserves that they carry per hard asset infrastructure, what is that percent of the reserves versus those types of things? Most of, again, I can only speak for this other cities that we see, their reserve levels are much greater than what the city's showing. I can't vouch if their reserves are too much or too little, but just what they carry on the books as reserves, as a function of population, of services provided, of hard asset infrastructure. As a percentage basis, it's going to be more than where your city is today. So I don't think you're running ahead of the game by projecting a $500,000 surplus at the end of the year. Again, only based on what I see other cities carrying on their books. I don't want you to take that as a blanket statement, because I don't look at all other cities. I look at a handful, and I see what they're doing. So that's just to kind of give you something to weigh against as you're evaluating where you want to bring next year's budget in.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes.
Going back to what Ray just said, did you get any information back from the county about the city's liability with Dell Road and other infrastructure that's on our border? Does that become our liability? Because we would definitely need to make adjustments to our budget to accommodate that if it is.
We do have a road improvement budget. I think it was about $40,000. Most of that money is dedicated to improving Klutz Road. The main road in question is going to be Dow. There's a little bit of Klutz and a little bit of Smith that are also in question. I'm currently trying to get some quotes for GIS mapping of just those 3 roads. I think sooner or later we need to do the entire boundaries of the city. But right now I'm still trying to get some quotes in place for those. You could certainly, and it would be probably wise to go ahead and put some additional funds in there in the event that we need to maintain Dow Road.
So the county told us that they are our liability?
Well, the county's throwing it on us, and they've sort of made it our burden to prove that they're not ours to maintain. My position was that the county needs to prove that they're not theirs to maintain. I haven't been able to get the county attorney and Mr. Holland to connect yet. I think they keep missing each other. So who wants to take a stance on that and how they do it, but it seems to be a little bit of a standoff right now. So I think at this time, we probably just need to at least go ahead, and I need to get the GIS mapping of those 3 areas. We have enough money in this year's budget to take care of that part. And as far as Dow Road, I think the major improvements for this next year, I think the road itself, after talking with Road and Bridge person over at the county is that Dow itself is not in terrible shape, so I don't expect that the road will need very much improvement over next year. I think we're looking at some general maintenance on the ditches and things like that, and I don't know that that would amount to a large amount of money where it would actually, thank you very much, that it would blow the road budget. So I think we may have built in enough, or we'll have enough in surplus that we'll be able to manage without adding a lot, but if you wanted to add some, you certainly could.
So first we have to find out what the actual definition is of our responsibility for that. That's why we got to have to do the GIS survey.
I mean, I'm not an abstractor and I don't want to guess too much, but I mean, after reading all the annexation ordinances from 1969 forward, I think we have half that road, half of most of those roads. And it's not practical to do half a road. So we're going to have to work something out with the county on how that's going to work. But I think we do have at least some partial responsibility for those roads.
Do you have anything in the budget set aside for that?
Well, the GIS mapping will come from this year's budget, so we have enough funds this year with the surplus that we project to generate that I'll probably come to you in the next meeting or two and request funding for that GIS mapping, but I need to get the quotes up first. So right now I'm trying to get that information out so that I can get some back. So probably in the next meeting or two you'll get a request from me to fund, and we'll have to kind of adjust our budget for that. I don't expect that's going to be a great amount just to do the mapping portion of it, but there will be some expense. As far as improvements to Dow Road, there's enough money in this year's surplus that if we went ahead and, August, September, whenever we can kind of get that mapping down and we determine who's responsible and we work out something with the county, at that point we probably still have plenty of money in there. I don't want to say plenty of money, that sounds terrible, but we have enough in this year's surplus to address the drainage on Dow and some of the immediate needs. So I don't know that you need to budget in. I wouldn't feel terribly burdened about budgeting in, for all the boundaries of all the roads throughout the city. I just kind of worry about Dow Road right now, and I think we're okay.
My only concern is we do have Dow Road, we do have aging infrastructure that's on the border of our city that we're becoming more and more, looks like we're becoming more liable for. At the same time, we have current production infrastructure, like we had a large repair that happened in Sonoma Verde.
Yes.
So I think we should make sure that we have enough in our road budget that if something does happen in the next fiscal year, we have the ability to take care of it.
Well, you could certainly pad that road budget if you'd like. I think it would be wise.
So that would be under, when we get to number 7, I have number 700, so hold that thought. So you want to just start with like 400?
I would probably, I think we could just go line by line. And Shelley and I and Ray will kind of take notes of anything that you want to change.
So Lisa, do you want to go out loud or you want me to?
I can if you'd like. Okay. So if you go to page 3 of that budget worksheet, the first couple of pages just kind of give you financial summaries. If you go to page 3, we've got revenue projections. I think today we were really meant to focus more on expenditures, but do you see anything in the overall revenue projections that you think, does anyone want to comment if you think anything is not quite right there?
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay. I assume that we would just really focus on the expenditures, but if you see something that you're not comfortable with in the revenue you think is not right, just let me know. Uh-huh.
Is it 305 municipal court income?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a judge that is on payroll, or is it a case by case?
It is a case by case. So we hardly ever have cases, but when we do, and I expect we will have more this coming year due to likely increased code enforcement activity, we call him, and sometimes it's our expense because if a case is lost, we can't charge somebody for court costs, and we'd have to pay that judge out of our pocket. If a case is somebody is found to be responsible and they have to pay for their fine, they're also court costs, they have to be responsible for those court costs, so he builds some of that in. But we call him as needed, and that's what we do.
So like the code enforcement that kind of for a year,
Shelley's officially our, like it or not, she's our court clerk. And we'll kind of arrange it together and call Judge Liston. But if, say, a citation is filed with the city, person gets a citation, whoever wrote that citation will file it here with the court clerk. We'll contact whoever that person was, send them a letter. They've got 30 days or what have you to contact the court to either pay it or to contest it. And it kind of goes from there. And at that time, we set up dates for the judge to come in, and we set a court date. We notify the person, and that we just kind of do it kind of case by case.
So that would be part of that income, and it's like the code enforcement, any traffic tickets or whatever else.
For the revenue for line 305 there, yes. We typically just, on the court income, we're not really making a profit. We just hope to cover our costs is what we do there, is all we want to do. We just want to make sure that we have enough to pay the judge, and we know that we won't win every case, that, sometimes things won't go our way and we'll have to pay the judge.
And the 306 is 25,000. That is just probably just one-time thing that because of the check.
Until that money is exhausted for the fire station bill, which we assume will be the majority of this year, it'll dwindle down slowly.
No?
Okay, so everybody's satisfied with those numbers?
Yes.
Okay. All right, on operating expenditures, we do have municipal court code enforcement in there as far as expenditures. We've got that at 1,000. That's going to be...
I asked you this question last year, but what is the item 415, section 380 grant program?
Okay, that is our, the tax rebates that we give to, currently it's Highland Homes, Bloomfield Homes will be also having one soon. I don't think they've submitted anything yet, but we approved Bloomfield Homes to have the same kind of arrangement. So the home builders that normally, when they buy products, materials for their home building, normally that sales tax revenue, it goes to whatever city where that was purchased. But with these direct sales tax permits that you all, council approved at one time or another, I can't remember who was here when Highlands first came in, that tax revenue, that sales tax revenue actually gets directed here to the destination point for the materials. And then what we do back is we rebate them back, I believe it's 40%.
40%.
We rebate them back 40%, so as kind of an incentive. So technically it's an economic development kind of agreement. So as an incentive, we get a little bit of tax money that way, sales tax money that we wouldn't otherwise get, but then we also give them a little bit of that. We rebate some of that back to them, because otherwise we wouldn't get
All
anything.
this year is because we had such a large, so many bill, because we had projected 3,800 in the 2020 budget, but we've actually spent around 12,000, but that's because we've had so much construction.
That's correct.
So we're just assuming a 7,800 based on building predictions.
What Sonoma, the numbers they threw out as far as how many rooftops would go up, we sort of compared that to how many rooftops did go up, got the percentage, and that's where that number came from.
Okay.
Lisa, can you, as far as, we don't really have a plan as a council yet as far as going to see the council going, but if we decide on item 402, if the council goes forward with, say, a special election in November, would there be additional costs associated with that, or what would that look like?
We've asked that question, in fact, today, and Shelley may want to chime in a minute, because I think she talked to the elections administrator today, or at least the office. But my understanding, and Shelley can confirm, is that as long as we call that special election, I think it's by the 17th.
If we call it by the last day we can call it is the 17th. If we call it by that date and they're able to get it on our existing ballot, most likely
August?
Which is the reason we have to have that special.
It would be an additional reason to have that special meeting, so yes. So we didn't adjust that, even though,
Well, that's good news.
What figure did they give, though, for the special election?
well, it would be, we were going to have, our May election was it 9 or 10,000 was the contract? Something like that? Okay.
How much,
I think it was around 11.
Okay.
I can't quite remember, but so our May election was postponed till November. I don't believe we've written them a check yet, but they will probably ask for it, I think they'll ask for it before the election. I can't quite remember the timing of it. So I don't know if it'll be the tail end of this year or it'll be the early part of next year. But we put in, looks like 12.5. Now you're going to have another election next May, unless something happens that that's a surprise. I never know, I mean, unless you'll have an election unless you have completely uncontested seats. You'll have an election. So I think the 12.5 is fair. We just don't quite know when we're going to get charged for this November one. But the 12.5 should cover next May's for sure.
Okay.
Well, should we budget for this previous May as well as next May's? Since it's going to be happening in the next budget cycle instead of 12.5, that only covers a single election.
I don't know when we're going to get the invoice for the November one for this year, so it could come before or it may come after. We can certainly adjust it if you think that's reasonable, Ray. We can adjust. If we don't spend it out of this year's budget, we can adjust this line item for next year.
Well, when will the election happen?
In November,
In November.
and then we'll have another one in May.
So then we would need to adjust next year's budget
So
for that if there's going to be two.
So we need to increase it from 12.5 to make sure that
You wanna
it's
put
able to cover
20
two elections.
20.
you want to do 25?
25, yeah.
Okay, let's do that. And then what you'll do is this year, because we didn't spend it, you'll have a little additional surplus from this year's budget. Oh, okay, I think, okay, so municipal court, those expenses are going to be things like letters we have to send out. Certified letters are about $6 a piece by the time we do everything we have to do with them. So those are just the costs associated with the comings and goings of correspondence and that sort of thing. So that was just an estimate. We just covered election expenses. Building inspections, we contract for building inspections with Northeast Texas building inspections, and that is what we expect to pay out because there's, we kind of correlate that with building permits. So that's the expected number that we would pay the inspector, assuming our prediction for building permits is correct. So the permit fees for buildings cover that charge.
So we think that number's going to go down?
Yes, because we decreased the building permit revenue. So if there's less revenue from the building permit, there'll be less cost from the inspections.
Okay, and then environmental regulations, these are our septic inspections. Kelly Stockberger, we contract with her. And that was the estimate for revenue for what we charge for those septic inspections. For I think they're $500 a piece, Shelley, those permits. Not everybody's on septic. Of course, Sonoma Verde is not on septic. But everyone else in the city is on septic. So we have more of our new homes built in Sonoma than we do elsewhere, but we still do have some revenue coming in from those septic permits. Are we good with that number? I mean, that's just based on our best estimate, and that also is kind of correlated with the building permits and kind of where we're seeing the building, Sonoma versus the other parts of the city.
And that public notice expense, is that down kind of for the same reason of expected building numbers?
Public notices, most of that public notices, that's going to come from, we have special use permits or zoning change notices. We also sometimes have expenses from PID, things that have to be noticed, but we get paid back for that part. But we still have to kind of put it here on the expenditure side of things. So I never quite know exactly what's going to happen over the course of the year, but we just kind of estimated, looking at last year and our best guesstimate for this coming year.
Does that also, in the public notices, does that also cover the request for services like RFPs?
Yes, anything that we advertise would go in there. So anything that goes into the newspaper. Occasionally for like the RFQs, we actually use the Dallas paper and the local paper for that. And unfortunately, we don't always use the Dallas paper. We certainly use the local paper if we can. That's our official paper, but we have a backup official paper, which is the morning news. So occasionally for timing reasons, because our local paper only publishes once a week, we occasionally have to use the morning news. And also if we're looking for a wider audience, like with those for proposals, we know that, maybe there's only a handful of contractors in one area, so we want to reach a wider audience, so we'll use the Dallas paper for those.
On 418, membership fees,
That could be TML. It could also be the Texas Municipal Clerks that Shelley and I are a member of. Any organization that we belong to. I think there's another one we do for human resources. I can't remember the name of the organization, but I think we pay a fee for that. So we want you all within the city and to be a member of TML because they just provide a lot of resources for us. So that's one. And then Texas Municipal Clerks, Shelley and I keep my city secretary certification current, even though I've moved on to other things, but it's not that much of an expense, but we get benefit of going to various workshops and seminars, things like that. Keeps us current.
on 423, community elections. Is the Christmas tree ready?
Yes, that's the only thing I know that we have planned at the moment, so we didn't quite know what to put in there. Something else could come up during the course of the year that maybe we want to do. Just know that, the budget can be amended if we need to. And then I know last year you were able to obtain some sponsorships for things too, so we just had to put our best guesstimate in there. But I think at the moment the only thing we really planned on was Christmas tree.
I really don't think I'm going to need that.
Okay.
$1,000 will be fine.
Okay. Everyone else good with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Or do we want to leave it in case we want to have a secondary event for some other reason or some time of year?
Well, let's make it as clean as we can. I mean, since she's in charge of the events, I say.
No, it's fine.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying because of COVID for this year, I don't know.
Right.
Maybe, I mean, I'm praying that we get to do
Right.
Christmas this year. If not, I really don't even know what I would do. I'm going to leave it if you want, or, I mean, I've got everything for Christmas.
I would suggest we keep it at 1,000 and make it as accurate as possible.
That's fine. So Ray, can y'all drop that down to 1,000?
Yep, sure can. Okay. Appraisal district collection, we're charged a fee for we don't collect our own taxes, the appraisal district does, so there's a charge for that.
I think we have that too low, based on where the projection, Lisa. We just got a bill in, and you can see that now we're going to be at 6,900.
Okay,
And we only budgeted 5,500.
You want to change it maybe to 7,500 to cover?
Well, I'm just saying that we know that our actual costs are going to be more than what we're budgeting, and we should probably think about bringing that up.
And with the 7,
Is what they charge us, is that prorated based off of property value, or how do they come up with that figure?
I think it's just I don't know if it's per property.
It's not property per value. The reason that the number moves is based upon, like, if they have to send second notices and all sorts of factors. So it's never like a per item cost. They're basically billing us some rate plus, time and material to get it done. But this, we got a bill in and it bumped it up to 6,900 now. So we should at least acknowledge that in the budget that we should be at least.
It seems like 7,500 to give you
Yeah.
an estimate.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Can we talk 430 public safety separately
Sure.
and just keep going with the
Yep.
operating fund?
Mhm.
Is everybody all right with that?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the next page, operating electricity, that's just our electric bill.
Actually, back at 429, we have street lights expense at 29, but there's no other information from previous years.
That was moved from public safety to the operating.
On 506, is there any way we can check to see if we've got a leak?
I think they've been out here, and I think we're good right now. We did have a leak at some point this year.
Because that's a lot.
Yeah, it's almost 3 times what we budgeted.
I think most people's water bills have gone up. This is High Point water here, so I don't have that. I live in Rockwell and I'm on city water, so I don't know what the norm rate is, for High Point out here. I just know that what we get for our bill here at City Hall. We can certainly have somebody come out and check again, but the last time I think, we had a leak and we fixed it
Do you know when that was?
a few months ago. It's dry, it's rock hard out there. I don't see any puddled water or anything. When it was wet, for a while there, it was kind of hard to tell that we were having a leak, and that's what happened there, I think. But it's real dry, and I just don't see any evidence of one at the moment.
Okay. Well, I would maybe keep an eye on it just in case and
Sure.
see and then can't we just turn the water off and then see if your little meter is still running, or is that on a different kind of system?
No, I think you could. You'd have to turn it off to all of City Hall, but
Yeah,
I think you
just
could
see
do
if
that.
if it's still running, you got a leak.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting charged a different rate than obviously residential? That would be my other question. Is there a commercial rate versus residential?
I don't think so. I think it's just usage.
Just volume?
I think so.
Okay.
On 514, building maintenance improvements, what improvements do you do? That's $1,000 a month. Do what?
It's going to be more.
Well, this year we had the parking lot restriped. They were real faded, and you couldn't see the handicap places anymore, and the fire lanes were real faded. So during COVID, it was actually a good opportunity for us to kind of clean that up a little bit. We also had the front posts stained. We had them stained, I think, the year prior, but you could hardly tell, so we went with a little darker color this year. But that's probably going to have to, because they're in the sun, they're probably going to have to be done nearly every year. The rest of that is just things that break and need to be fixed.
Okay.
Is this where you do your cleaning too?
No, I think that's under a different one. The cleaning, janitorial, that's under different. It's not under maintenance, is it?
No, the janitorial's in there. There's not a separate line item for janitorial.
Oh, okay. Then it is in there. So we pay we contract for cleaning. We have City Hall cleaned 2 times a month.
And pest control.
Pest control, that's true, pest control. Okay.
For 516, I'd like to ask you to reevaluate getting lawn maintenance. I don't think it should be a job of the code enforcement officer, whether we have a full-time or part-time, because that person needs to do code enforcement and not lawn maintenance. And, I know you felt you paid too much, so try to get if you wouldn't mind, just get a bid that meets what your requirements are.
Okay.
What is it exactly that you have, what is it exactly that the maintenance is?
We pay about $750 a month, and that's year-round, for someone to come out and mow City Hall. And,
You're talking about just the city hall or?
well, everything that's mowed, so we don't go all the way back to the edge of our property, but we mow an area around it. And then a couple of times a year, they do like a color change and change out the mulch and put seasonal flowers. And I think they only do that about twice a year, spring and fall.
Okay.
So I'm not opposed to doing that if that's the route council wants to go and add that back in. We took it out because we kind of thought we were right on the edge of, did we do full-time code enforcement or part-time code enforcement? And we thought, if we don't keep them busy all the time, and the fact that we have very little lawn maintenance in the winter, there are times when they're out there mowing and I don't see a difference from when they started when they finished because there's been no growth. They might even it up just a little bit, but there's not a lot. We thought that there probably wouldn't be, in the summer you're going to have more time, but maybe they could just kind of count on 1/2 day a week that they would mow the lawn. And we had to buy lawn equipment this past year because of Station 2, and the fire department actually keeps that 2-acre lot mowed, so we have some equipment, so they just need to haul it down here and sit on the mower for however long it takes to mow it and then do a little edging. So we didn't think it would be that much of a burden, and we thought we could, it kind of irks me a little bit to pay $750 a month in the dead of winter when it's not a whole lot of.
You can negotiate that and figure out if you don't have to pay that much.
We looked at it a couple of years ago, and I think most people wanted a monthly rate like that. But we can certainly go out again and see what we can find. So I guess.
Is there a placeholder amount you would like to put in there for now?
Well, I know this sounds crazy, but I guess you would put in the 8,000 until you figure out what it's going to be.
Right.
So 8,000 even?
I would just put that in there, that's a placeholder, but hopefully Lisa will be able to get a better deal. But I really don't think it should be the code enforcement officer, even though it might be convenience. I think it's better to focus his job on, or her job on.
All right, we can do that.
But I'm just one person, so you guys have to.
I agree.
It's a good idea.
All right.
Keep the code enforcement person busy doing what they need to be doing, code enforcement wise.
So for 522 website expense, you've got that, up to 2,500. Is that
Shelley,
that
can you-
based on one of those proposals?
Yes, Shelley, can you hit the button a couple of times? I think there's I'm not sure what order it's in. Keep going. Again. Another one. One more. There we go. So I did get 2 quotes so far, and what we had was anything from, if you wanted a quick fix, which would be just updating the graphics and reorganizing the menu, would be about $2,500, all the way up to the top one was about $10,500 for a complete redesign. And then one of them suggested that they could also be happy to do website management monthly. I don't know that we need that, but if council thinks we do, I put it out there for you to think about. They would update it monthly, take off old information, put new information on, current information, probably continually make sure that our pictures and information is up to date all the time. They could also help assist staff with, we can take things, we can, post the agenda and do things like that, but they could maybe help do more major changes if you wanted to consider that. So we do need a number if we want to go that route, or it's just really up to council as to how happy with or how unhappy you are with the current website.
With the 2,500 jump from the 1,000 to 2,500, what's that 1,500 cover? Because that doesn't seem to be
We have, is website hosting in there?
Yes. The
So-
the website hosting is in that number
Okay.
as well. So that's your base cost just to have one.
That's, I'm presuming to be the 1,000, or what's, and then the extra 1,500 is for what? Because for 2020, it was 1,000, and then for 2021, it's proposed 2,500.
Okay, I think I just assumed that we would make some changes to the website. I don't know that I consider it a complete overhaul, but it does need a little bit of more than what I can do. Our current provider is retiring, and after this year, he's not going to be available anymore, so we will have to hire somebody to, I think it needs a little bit more cleanup at the very least. So I think I put that number in there just for thinking minimal cleanup.
Do you have to put out a RFQ or RFP or anything like that, or what do you have to do to get?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because the RFQ, so the state of Texas, the procurement laws, the book is real thick, but, and I'll be happy to share it with you, but 50,000 is the threshold, so anything under 50,000 we don't have to do bids for.
Okay.
But we usually go out, and if we don't do a true RFQ or an RFP, request for proposal, we will at least call around and get quotes. So when we did the parking lot, I called 3 people, actually Chief called 3 people, and talked to them, and we got 3 quotes. When I washed the windows, Judy called 3 people, and we got 3 quotes. So we usually try to get at least 2, hopefully 3. We tend to try to do more local. We usually just call who's in the DFW area. We don't usually reach real far for those. We typically don't advertise. We just call and kind of get the best deal around. We're also a member of like purchasing co-ops and all. So if Chief buys equipment, it's usually a common enough, like fire equipment, that other departments are buying it too. So because we're a member of that co-op, we're going to get the best price for some of those ordinary things, equipment and things that he needs. So that's kind of the way that works. So for big items, I request for proposals over 50 for sure. We can certainly do them for under 50, but if it's a relatively small item, we usually just go out and get quotes. That's kind of what our practice has been. I did talk to the mayor briefly about maybe coming up this, maybe once we get past budget, coming up with a purchasing policy that would kind of go into, if you want to lower that 50,000 threshold for McLendon-Chisholm, we could certainly do that. So if you wanted to make a lower one for anything above 10,000, we would go out and do competitive bids.
Okay.
We can certainly do that. Or when is it appropriate just to use the purchasing co-ops? So we thought we would kind of develop a policy. I may not be able to get to it till after we get through this budget season, but we can certainly do that as a goal for this next year. We'd probably also want to include, Chief has a bank card. I have one. I think Shelley has one. I can't remember if Judy has one or not, but we do have bank cards that we use for purchases that we are not going to be invoiced for. So mine, I very rarely use it unless I'm traveling for a conference, and then I may use it to pay my hotel bill or meals or something like that. I think if we buy office supplies, things like that, usually we get an invoice for things, but occasionally we have to buy something and we have to pay for it another way. So we get receipts for all of those things, but I think it would be good because our staff is expanding, that anybody that's going to have a card like that probably understand what the policy is and know when it's appropriate to use it, know that receipts are expected. If it's going to be a vendor that we use all the time, we'd prefer to be invoiced for it. It's a lot easier than having to deal with about 20 receipts from someplace. So if we can set up an account, that kind of thing, that makes it easier. So if we could come up with a policy, I think that would be a good goal for this next year.
Okay.
Well, when it comes to the website, I would like an RFQ, RFP for it. And the reason is that, A, it's, when anybody looks at the city, it's the first place that they go. So I want to make sure that the company we pick does a really good job. At the same time, we're still sort of struggling through the iCompass program as well. So putting in an RFQ for a company that has worked with that platform before to be able to bring it more seamless with our website would be very helpful.
My only thing with the website that I might struggle with just a little bit is how much do you want to do? Because they're going to want to know, in that RFQ, we're going to have to lay out exactly what we want. If you want a complete redesign, or if you want minimal updates. So I just have to have a little bit more information before I could issue that, but we can certainly do that. In the meantime, though, we're going to need some kind of a placeholder to put, I need a number to put in. We can always adjust it, but I'm going to need a number to put in for now.
Did you say that the current website hosting provider is retiring? And
He'll be around for probably another year, but
okay.
He's kind of given me notice that he's no longer living in the area.
Okay.
They will update for us, but they're not as quick to update as they used to be. I usually have to give them notice.
Is it, I mean, this is just a question. I think I may know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because our schools, start kind of technology training and stuff like that, is there any way to maybe hire them or anything like that to see? I mean, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but...
I mean, I can ask the high schools and see. I have no idea what's on their curriculum as far as technology.
Because don't they have like, vocational type or, don't they?
This is getting a little advanced as far as websites.
Plus, I'm not sure we want them to have
Well,
access to city
yeah.
proprietary.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured that's what the answer would be. I'm just trying to think of keeping it.
Well, like William said, that's the gateway to whether or not they want it. So
There are big companies out there, Civic Plus and Civic Web, and I worked in other cities. They charge a fortune, and a lot of times they won't even talk to you if you're a little city because they know you're not going to put out $40,000-$50,000. So I didn't look at those large companies. The quotes I got from were pretty small companies.
I would say maybe 5.
That's what I was thinking, because looking at the quotes, and of course, we can't talk about it in the open session, it would seem that 5,000 might be the average placeholder for the maker.
I think that's reasonable.
I'd like to see us put 10, but that's my bias. I'm rebuilding my website for my office right now, so I know the costs associated with that. Again, not assuming that we're going to spend 10,000, but just having that, if we decided as a council to completely rebuild it, knowing that it could cost up to that, I'd like to at least plan for that if you guys are okay with it.
I'm okay with
5 or 10?
10.
You want to go 10?
Again, not saying that we have to do that, but at least.
I would like to see that too, because I really would like to see us.
Yeah, because I looked at one of the companies that submitted to us. How much detail can I get into about?
I wouldn't go into names. I think you can talk about numbers without listing the names.
Can I see who they work with as well, or no?
I wouldn't.
Okay, never mind.
And it's not to be secretive, just so the public knows too, is that when you're dealing
Right.
with companies that compete against one another, if you put a price out there, and then the other one, it'll constantly be undercutting and all, and then it becomes unfair.
Yeah.
So if it's a competitive bid and we put it out there and then we open all the bids at the same time, then it's fair. But if I'm going out just to get a quote here and a quote there, I don't call up a company and say, hey, I got a quote for 5, what can you do for me?
Right.
We usually don't quite do that. We usually just go out, see what they can offer, and then bring it back. So when I asked for the 2 companies, I said, give me the gamut of what you can do and how much it would be, and they threw out their suggestions at me, and that's what you've got.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can certainly do the RFQ. We'll just need to determine how much you want to read. It sounds like you're leaning more towards a redesign rather than just a little update. So probably the 10 would be a good number. And then we can work on specifics.
That website's what, 5?
I don't think it's quite that old. I think it came online right about the time I was getting here, and that would have been 2017, so maybe 3.
And is the redesign just to redesign it, but what about, monthly upkeeps or whatever? How does that?
I
where
think
does
that would be
fall?
additional. I mean, we could certainly put in for that as part of the RFQ, and then maybe we could consider it kind of optional whether we wanted to do that or not. I'm not extremely proficient with that type of thing, so I can add and take off, but there are certain things on the one we have, and I don't know if it's just a few quirks with ours, but occasionally I have great difficulty with it, and I have to call the host and say, hey, please, I can't figure out how to add a column or take something away, and it gives me grief. But as far as just putting an attachment on or taking off, we can do that kind of thing. We can update the calendar, which reminds me I need to do it, but those kinds of things we can do. The beauty, I guess, of having a monthly management is they're going to have a list of, on the first of the month, I'm going to update the calendar, and I'm going to change out, and, they're going to have they're going to have a routine, they're going to have things that they address each and every month as part of that maintenance.
Okay.
So we can get a price for that.
What about the audio-video chamber updates?
All right, so far I've only been able to get one quote from that. My great difficulty is everybody's got a different opinion about what needs to be done in here to make it all work together. So our current provider, he just threw out a number ballpark, said 40 grand, and I just about had a heart attack. And then we went out and reached out to another one that was recommended by our current technology provider, by my computer guy. It was a recommendation, and they came up with, I think it was the 17.5 number that you have. I think it was 17.5. 18? Okay. They came up with that number, and I think I have a list in there of what that included, but one monitor would be larger than this because this one is actually, I'm seeing it pretty good today, but I'm a little closer today. But I think it included a pull-down screen so that sometimes like a spreadsheet would be very difficult to see up there, so it would give you some more detail. The other things were these portable microphones are actually out of compliance. FCC has added, as of July, said we're not supposed to use those anymore. I don't know why. It's just they sold something to somebody else, and apparently you're not supposed to use, I guess it's a frequency or something on there. So all those need to be replaced regardless. We have trouble with those mics that are tied in. I listened to the meeting online last time because I was quarantined, and I had a huge difficulty trying to understand anything anybody said because there was a loud hum going on through the whole thing. So it was really hard for me to hear, and I think that was part of this confusion this last week is I had a lot of trouble hearing the meeting online. And of course we have issues with sometimes it just cuts off. It just cuts off. Just
It
stops.
gets tired.
And that's not always an iCompass thing. Sometimes I think it may be a network blip. But then other times we're not sure what causes it. So this would be some new speakers. It would be at least one new screen, updating all of these tied-in mics. It would be components in that cabinet over there. It would also be tying in that cabinet to making it a real kind of a built-in cabinet. It would still move so they could get to it, but it would be something that we could kind of lock up because this room is also used as a community room, and this divider has proven to be a real headache, so I can't move it by myself. And when we've tried to move this divider to where people can only use that half of the room, it's very difficult to lock in place. Occasionally it gets stuck halfway, so we've been leaving it open, and it makes me a little bit nervous. Not that I think anybody's doing anything bad in here, but I don't know who's in here sometimes. It may be a large group, and I just don't want to find things missing or touched. I know this system in particular is real sensitive, so if somebody goes over and just twists dials, it's going to just mess it up. So that would kind of secure that, so where we could lock it, and then I'd feel a little bit more comfortable about somebody being in this room.
I think our outreach to the community is imperative right now because they're not coming here, and we need to be able to get ourselves heard out there and what's going on. In addition, as we get to population of 5,000, it would be mandatory that we have the working system because we'll be changing to, the other form of government which requires us to broadcast.
Well, if you went that route, you don't have to change the form of government, but if you decided to go that way, then yes, there are some different requirements.
So as far as budgeting, do we want to go
I actually suggest going a little bit higher than what's
20,
18.
25?
Yeah, but I would like to do, like Will said, we were going to do for the website and put an RFQ out on that one too.
Oh, I would for that.
There are quite a few companies I personally know that would be something
Yeah.
somebody would
I just did quotes to get a ballpark idea,
Yeah.
is what I did for budget. But we'd have to kind of determine, maybe somewhat based off the quote I received, exactly what we want to replace in here and be fairly specific about what you're willing to live with and what you don't have to have.
Well, I would like to see all of it work together. In other words, our website.
Me too.
Icon, that's everything. Whatever we've got, whatever we're doing, it all has to be able to talk to each other and work.
Well, that's not going to be cheap, I'm just telling you.
Well, I'd rather have it work and pay for it than
Oh, no.
not
So-
work and still pay for it.
Do we want to maybe do 25,000 just to be safe?
Just a placeholder.
Yeah, just as a placeholder until we can figure out.
Okay.
I'd like to get maybe even one of those companies to come and present to us, if that would be feasible.
I think you can, after you put out the proposals, request for proposals, we still kind of get into an issue of, I have to look and see whether that's considered a competitive bid. That one we may just have to open. I'd have to look and see the specifics for that one. So the procurement laws in Texas are about that thick, and each one's a little differently. So for those professional services, like the project management company, the rules are way different than for construction, say. I mean, it all kind of
I
changes.
just want to make sure if we're going to do this, that we're having a fair comparison of, if company A is going to charge us $10,000 to redo the website, and then we're on our own for everything else, and then company B is going to charge us $20,000, but that includes monthly maintenance and social media presence,
Right.
and they're helping.
Well, that's the beauty of the RFQs, is when you do them, that it kind of does an apples to apples,
Okay.
so I would agree. Okay, so
You guys
25?
good with 25 on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's 522.2.
So let's see, we'll proceed with 604.
Yep. All right, so general administrative, municipal manuals, books, and maps. These are things that we have. Local government code has an update every other year. Any kind of, trying to think, we get updates periodically. What is that other book we have in there that we get supplements for? Yes, election law, municipal. So we have these little, you can see them in Shelley's office, but there are binders in there with manuals, and the manual may be updated, and they'll send us a supplement. So we take out the old pages and we put in the new pages, and so they charge us for those. Maps would be, that could be that the GIS mapping might fall in there, it's probably not going to be in next year's budget, but if we decided to do the whole boundary, it could fall in there. But we just put the minimal for those supplements, is all that one is. That should cover the book supplements.
Can we talk 606 separately, please?
Sure.
618 is liability insurance. Can you tell me what liability, what that's for?
True, falling apart.
Anything that we might be found at fault for and have to pay.
Okay, and why just liability, though? I mean,
We have other insurances in different places. So when you go down to personnel, we've got workers' comp, and then we pay for health insurances on a different line.
so this is just
Property
on-
insurance is on a,
This is just on a property? Or what is the liability insurance?
I guess anything that would happen on city property, or anything that personnel, if somebody did something that caused harm. I think
Or
all
like
that
if-
would fall under
Like if our
liability.
lawnmower guy got hurt or something, or
Could be.
possibly. Okay. Have we shopped that around?
We have
When was the last time we've shopped?
well, that comes from TML, so we get all of that isn't that correct, Ray? All that falls under TML insurance, doesn't it?
That's right.
Okay.
Most of the cities use TML.
For line 623, does that include the laptops that we were talking about?
I think we actually put that under a separate line for this time, for the laptops. Let me look. Did we put a placeholder in for the new
It
laptops?
does not include the laptops. Those would be capital, and I'm not sure, Lisa, when we added the 15,000 on top of the 40, if that was for the laptops or what that was for. But I don't believe the laptops are in this budget.
Well, we could also talk about funding those laptops with 2020 money.
2020 money.
You could.
And, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, while we're on laptops, Shelley, can you go back to the laptop? So there's a couple, keep going back. One more. Okay, so we had previously talked about laptops versus iPad versus using personal devices. And then we already talked about the audiovisual provider. And go ahead and go forward, Shelley, if you don't mind. You can hit the, okay. So, and I just took this from my computer guy because he knows a lot more than I do, but he's suggesting that council budget $800 per council member or $4,800 total for new laptops. We did ask, because I was asked by a council member or two, that what about purchasing less expensive laptops, because that sounds pretty expensive. He said we could go a little bit lower, and I'll show you a couple of options in a minute, but he said to just be careful with those less expensive ones, because the memory and the speed and the programs and the activities that we need to run off these computers, they may not have enough of it on those small ones. So by the time you do all the add-ons, you might as well have gotten an upgraded laptop. So if you want to switch to the next one, there's a couple of options that they suggested. I don't know anything about any of these. I don't have any of these. I don't have a preference. I don't need one. But this was one of his top picks, was the Surface Pro. And you can kind of see what it looks like there. And the technical.
It's a bigger screen than this thing. Slightly.
Yeah. I mean, I personally don't. I didn't issue myself one of those iPads. I personally have great difficulty doing any work on them. They're fine if you're surfing the net, but I can't work on them. But you maybe you like them. I don't know, but I would have great difficulty. We've had difficulty every time we switch council members. People come and go. Even just this last time, Will's had an issue and we had to get it repaired, and now we can't get back into it. And by the time you send it off to Microsoft and you get it back, believe it or not, months pass. Yes, exactly. It's not a joke. It really is. I know that Bill Harris kind of fed up with them, and I think we've decided that it would be more productive for you all to have these, and it would be less of a hassle when we change people. But it's really up to you. Then can you switch to the next option there? This was, I think, his number 2 pick. These are about $600, and these are Surface Go's. I think they're just a little bit smaller.
It's got a similar size screen.
It's kind of like a big iPad with a keyboard, I think. And I really don't know a whole lot about any of them. I actually just took that off of the Amazon page when I priced them, and to confirm that Bill's hair was.
But the keyboard and pen are sold separately.
Oh, well, there you go. So maybe $650 of these.
Gotta read the fine print.
Yeah. Okay, so I just need a number there. I know some of you may be using personal devices, others may be using iPads, so.
It just saves my sanity to do my own.
Well, I would like to suggest we put that and not make it an expense for the 2021 budget, and bring it in for the 2020 budget, and put it as an agenda.
Okay, for this current budget.
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't know what the office equipment is on 623. That's
That's going to be, it could be the postage machine, it's going to be any hard equipment. I think, was my laptop this year? I can't remember. No, I think I got mine last year. I can't remember.
There were some upgrades on at least 3.
Mm-hmm.
So
So that falls under equipment, though? Upgrades do?
Yeah, so typically, the capitalization policy, in other words, whether or not we're going to call it a capital item versus an expense, the cities use a threshold of $2,500. So if it's $2,500 or more, we book it as a capital item. If it's less than 2,500, we book it as an expense item. And you can set that number anywhere you want it, but if you think about it, anything that you call capital ends up on what we call a depreciation schedule.
Right.
And if you use all these, if you set it really low, your depreciation schedule is going to be 100 pages long. So you pick some number that is, a fair split on it. And so the city has used 2,500, but you're not locked into that.
Okay.
And that may actually be low. 2,500 is actually pretty low now, but it seems to be working well.
Okay. Office equipment maintenance, is our copier fall under that one? Copier. Printed materials, this is going to be anything that we send out. We don't always do a newsletter, but we have typically once a year or so sent something out to the public. So if we do a mail out, we just kind of estimated what we spent last time and what we might need to spend this time. But the postage, postcards, whatever we might need. Postage City Hall, that's just what we spend on postage here, sending things out. Bank fees, just what we charge for, or what the bank charges for doing business, wire transfers, or whatever it is that we've done that month. Legal and professional, accounting and payroll, Ray's here, so he can probably tell you how all that breaks out. But we contract for accounting services. His services have expanded over the years, whether he liked it or not. We've sort of put him into new roles. As personnel expanded, they took on quite a bit of human resource type stuff, helping us get our payroll done and up and squared away. And with that, we took a couple of experiments and kind of finding the right one with the fire department and these shift schedules and the pay associated with those shift schedules. He also does some of our, I call him when we talk about budget, so financial consulting and advice, and like we're doing now, talk on the budget and things like that. So he has, we pay him per month, and then kind of additional, I guess, as needed for these other services.
Yeah, so the 63001 is a fixed fee for all accounting, payroll, financial report production, the first draft of the budget, one budget workshop, all of that's fixed fee. And we held the current fee steady for 18 months. But over that time, we've got, there's more transactions, there's more employees. And so we're going to take this opportunity, if you allow us, to kind of bring it back up to be more in line with the amount of time we're spending on it. Then if we do anything outside of that fixed fee arrangement, if we have to, help Lisa, like as an example, the figuring out how SB2 was going to work, those kinds of things. Where
we actually signed Ray up for the same workshop that I went to at T-Mel, just to make sure we were all on the same page.
And that still didn't help a lot, did it?
I took it twice.
But anyway, but anything that would fall on the financial consulting would be a special request from Lisa that we would, we would do. But other than that, everything else is a flat fee.
They spend a lot more time. The grant reimbursements that we have to submit, those took up a lot of time.
So as far as the audit, is that something that you would recommend us, we do that every year? Or is that something that, because I know at one point in time we were doing that like every other year or something like that, but that may be a long time.
I think you should do it every year.
I do too. If there's a problem, you want to find it sooner than later.
Gotcha.
Hey, Lisa and Ray, under 63005 City Planner, it says increase to accommodate comprehensive plan update. Can we take the comprehensive plan update as its own line item and move it to 522.3.
Well, if we can move it up there, because it has to do with the 5%.
Yeah, but we got the website design, redesign up there, and we're redesigning our comprehensive plan. So 522.1 is website design, redesign. So if we're redesigning our comprehensive plan, it should be its own line item under 522.3.
I think it would still, I don't know. I think I'd still like to see it under professional services.
But I would definitely like it to be a separate line
Yeah,
item.
I don't want it blended with the city plan.
Because I'm not sure I think we need to put out an RFP on that as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's why,
Did you want to consider putting it
that's why we have dot ones.
out of this
Yeah.
year's budget? Because that way you could, it'd take me a little while to figure out an RFQ for it, but I think that's a good idea. That way you get some options from different folks, and
Yeah.
people's approaches to it may be very different. But considering the surplus we have this year, we might want to consider funding it out of this year's budget.
Yeah.
I don't know, we're putting a lot that we're going to have to be doing in August and September. And do we have the time to get all these things done? That's my only question.
I think we could do an RFQ for that.
I mean, and I would like to, and then just push that budget item back down to the, we budgeted, what, 4,500, but we've only spent 10,000, so I'd like to really reduce that.
Yeah,
Line item.
but it's blended in with the comp plan.
Okay.
updates.
So the only thing about, I hear what you're saying on that, but let me, while I'm thinking about it, on paying this year versus next year. So when someone provides a service like that, typically they bill us a percentage of the service completed. So if they're a month into it and they've done 20% of the work, they'll send us an invoice for that 20%. So because a comp plan takes 6 to 8 months, we probably maybe want to split it over this year and next year. That's what I'm thinking.
Right, but we don't need 45,000 just for the city planner to segregate out the comp plan.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
So you would go 63,005 out there, right?
And move 6305.
Well, actually, we're talking about, we'll put some aside for, if we get it started in 2020, we'll finish it in 2021, so we need money in both budgets.
Okay, so there'd be, when we adjust this year's budget, we're probably going to have some expense, I would think, to engage them.
So we picked up some of that in the projection for 2020. You'll see the change from where we were to where we are now. So some of that's, unless he did something that we were unaware of, but I think we added a bite of that already in 2020. But maybe I'm also double dipping and putting the entire amount back in 2021 with the 45. That makes sense what I'm saying? I may have double dipped it.
Why don't we leave,
Why don't we just make the 2021 the same as the 2020 projection? And that way you'll be blending it out.
Okay.
Lisa, does that make sense what I'm saying?
so, do we just want to split it in half?
Right, putting half of it 2020 and then half of it 2021.
Okay, so divide the 45?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Wait. So the city planner does more than just comprehensive plan. So what I was inferring was the city planner gets a salary of a set amount of money. And then we're going to have a set amount of money for the comprehensive plan. It may not be the same person that's doing that. So you need the amount of money that would pay the city planner to do
Why
what
would
he
you
does
not have
now.
the city planner why would you not have the city planner do the comp plan?
Well, I think they talked about doing an RFQ to make sure we were getting the best deal on it and to make sure that we like the approach.
Did you
That's why I
have,
wanted to know who it's on.
did you have a number for that comprehensive plan?
I want to say we were looking at 25,000 total. Is that's what our current planner, now I've seen comp plans go way up to 40-ish.
Well, so city planners
Yeah.
are 45
Um,
right now, but
So the comp plan that our current planner, the price he gave, I think was about 25 on the high end. I have seen comp plans a lot higher than that, so I don't know if we want to budget a little bit more for a line item of a comp plan. Because that 45 is the 25 plus the current planning. You know, what he does normally versus adding on the comp plan.
So normally it would be 20,000, and then you added 25 to cover the comprehensive.
Yes. I'm just,
Is that something you can go back and, we have no idea how much a comprehensive plan.
it depends, you know, we'll have to do that RFQ, but what he said at 25 was a pretty good price, pretty low. I mean, I've seen them.
I thought you had told me somebody else was like 40.
Yeah, they are. I've seen them a lot higher, and it depends on how large the city is and what you're asking of them and what you come to terms with. But, you know, we'll put out an RFQ, and then they'll come back and you'll look, and you'll have to decide what exactly you want to do, and do you like somebody's approach to it better than somebody else's, and are you willing to pay for it? I don't have a preference on the comp plan. That's really, I'm kind of interested to see what the RFQs would look like.
So did we pay the previous city planner almost 10,000?
So far.
So it's all lumped, the current one and the one we had prior, before we ended that relationship, it's all under that same item.
So thus far this year, we paid $9,935 for the city plan.
No, we're looking at 26,350.
That's where we think we're going to end up at the end of the year.
But so far, we've only paid $9,930.
No, that was last year, right?
No, I know what the confusing part is. When we prepared this worksheet, the revision before this one, we were up to 99.35. And then it's been we've had 2 months of activity since the version before this was prepared, and it went from 99.35 to 26. So what we're seeing on his bills is that in other words, there's not a set amount per month that we're getting from him on his bills to the city. He had done a lot of work that may have been two or three months worth of work, which is what Lisa was saying before, and then it showed up on a bill.
So within 2 to 3 months, he's done almost 20, he's been, 17,000?
Right.
Now, if it's an application, say a plat or special use permit or one of those application fees will cover. So we just pass through those professional consulting fees is what we do. So they actually pay an application fee, and then they pay a consulting fee. But we offer up a free hour to kind of just get some basic questions. You know, before you even approach a project, you may just have some basic questions. So he's going to charge us for that, and we're going to pay that. So that's kind of been our practice the last couple of years, is that we offer up a developer or individual, whoever's asking the questions, an hour's worth of his time, and we pay for that to see if they want to pursue a project or not pursue a project. And then beyond that, we ask people to submit a reimbursement agreement. And that doesn't come before you. That's just something that I write up, and I talk to the planner and say, hey, what's your estimate on what amount of time do you think you'd spend on that? And then we have them put down a deposit. And then if it goes over that, or it looks like it's going to go over that, we'll bill them out again and say, hey, you need to put down another $5,000 or whatever it is. But typically you want your, whatever the activity is, is paying for the cost of that planner. So if we had them do something special or on the side or additional, or we just had a ton of inquiries, we'd pick up more of that cost.
And I wanted to point out that for this current budget, we had budgeted 45,000. And we're only at 26. So typically, the city planner fees, without anything extra, have always been in that 40 to 45 range.
So the 45 is not including.
Okay, so we dropped it because we weren't spending that much, and then we just added the 25 back for the comp plan.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So the 45 is not including the comprehensive plan.
In the proposed budget, it is. But what I'm saying is that historically, without the comprehensive plan, we've picked a target of about 45. Looks like we're going to come in under that for this year.
We're going to come way under that.
What's the reason why? I can only say, because I don't know
It's just activity levels vary.
what work in process he has in his shop.
Okay.
With your previous city planner, who was a smaller operation, they build the city like clockwork. This current city planner is a big company.
Oh, well, we switched again.
Oh, you switched again?
Yeah. So
Well-
it's going to lag behind a little bit,
Okay.
but we switched again.
So,
We went
Keep
from the
up,
small
Ray,
to the
keep
big,
up.
back to the small.
but this 26,350 that we're projecting seems low to me. But what I'm saying is, I don't know since we've switched, I don't know what work he has not billed the city for.
Right. Is he just behind in billing?
Well, they
Yeah.
run them, I mean, they're not going to charge until the expense has been incurred.
You know?
And it could be that, some of these plats, they may take 2 or 3 months to actually process through. So he's going to bill for the activity per month. And it may be that by the time we finish it, it may be several $1,000s for a big developer to process something, but they're only going to get billed per month, but it's going to lag a month behind. And we have had issues in the past, and this is why we require a deposit up front now, where something would be closed out, it's gone through P&Z and council, and it's finished, but then we end up sending them a bill, and they've got sticker shock going, oh, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that. And so now we have a little note on there that says, it's possible that if your deposit doesn't cover everything, that you will be invoiced for any remaining amount. But we actually had a couple of discrepancies in the last year or two about, people don't understand that it may lag behind a little bit, that the work will be done, and then the planner is going to bill for it. And the deal with switching companies, I don't want to go into it too much, but the big company was, everybody in that company that touched something charged for it. So you didn't just have one planner that touched it. You had
The junior associate.
you had a junior associate. You might have a draftsman. You might have an admin assistant that did the addressing for the notices. And everybody had a hand on it. And that's kind of where those costs were getting a little bit out of control. So that was one of my issues with them.
Okay, so do we want to split that and put it back where the comprehensive plan point?
Yeah, 63005.1, and have a line item comprehensive plan of 25,000. Is what we said.
You want to go a little higher on it in case it's more than that, or I think 25 is on the low
We're
end.
only covering part of it, because the other part would be
Okay.
paid for in 2020.
That's true. Okay, gotcha.
And what did we want to put 63005 at?
You said
I would leave it as city planner.
No,
Or
you
don't
said
the amount?
The amount,
25.
25.
25, that's right,
Okay. And what was the other on the comprehensive plan?
25.
Okay, so we went up 5.
Okay.
Let's get moving to the next one.
Yeah. Okay. Financial consulting, what is that?
Is that just all the bid consultants and all that fun stuff?
So there was 17 of that was for there was one amount that was like 17 grand that we put in there for, I can't remember what it was for. It was a special study that was done, was it?
Oh, that was that fee, the sewer fee study, I think. I can't remember if that was the amount
So
or
that's-
not.
that's
That
the-
might have been 11,000.
Anyway, there was one amount that was approximately half of that.
Okay.
And the rest of it are little projects that we will do or other people that come in and, you know, from the financial advisor, sometimes we get pass-through fees from stuff that they do and things like that. But half of that was one item.
Or is it worth noting that, do we need to go in and maybe put a subcategory into that one? Or not, is it not worth doing that?
So whatever you guys would like to do.
Do you, council, see any need to put a subcategory for that or no?
I think it would, just because it helps to know how much you've already spent on, like the sewer. I mean, that, you know, it would be nice to know exactly, but that's me. I mean, that's,
Well, where would
So, I mean, I
that
don't
line
know.
item have fallen, the expense for the sewer construction plans?
So the construction plans, now that particular
'cause to me, that's.
aspect will be on the utility budget.
Yeah, utility
Okay.
fund.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But I mean, I just don't understand why that 11,000 or that sewer fund would go under financial consulting. But unless it's because you're trying to find out.
How much it would?
Okay.
You did our wastewater rate study.
And I think that one, I don't know that we put that one under utility. I think that was under here, right?
I apologize for not remembering exactly which study we did.
That's kind of why it's important to do the
Yeah.
1.2.
But we can certainly, I think if it's going to be, I agree, if it's like a big number,
Yeah, over
we
10,000
will
or something.
break it out going forward.
I just think it would help. The
Yes.
older I get, the less I remember, so.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving down the road here.
Engineering,
Any comments there at all, guys?
we contract for engineering services as well. Again, if it's part of a subdivision, we bill that to the subdivision. So for instance, Wellington Manor and Sonoma Phase 2, they're going to have ongoing engineering inspections throughout all the infrastructure buildings. So the concrete, drainage, earth moving, you know, whatever's going around, all the stuff that's on the ground, not the stuff that's going vertical, but the stuff on the ground. That's the things that and the plans for the subdivision that the engineer would review. We bill that to the subdivision. So, you know, it may be $1,500 a month for the subdivision to get those inspections, but we pass those through. The other part that's in there, that's going to be for, I get a drainage complaint, I get, I actually had the engineer go out with me to Dell Road and look at, because I'm not qualified to determine if something is graded properly or not. So I took him with me and he looked at it and he took some shots or whatever he does to determine, you know, if things were the right direction or not. But that's for those little things like that. So when I need a professional engineering consultant, or for instance, when we got Sonoma Verde, the road repair, I had the engineer that we had at that time go out and does it need it, what needs to be done, you know, that kind of thing. So we have them go out and evaluate. So,
Any other comments, you guys?
And it's up 10 grand because of what we've got coming up, do you think, or?
it's, you know, these are all just guesstimates, but that's just what we, based on activity and based on some things getting a little older and maybe needing a little bit more review. We've had issues with, I know League Road already had some repairs done, and it wasn't even that old, but I had to have the engineer go out there and tell me what repairs needed to be done, and then he had to actually talk to the people where there was a warranty under, and there was just a lot of back and forth. So even though the repairs themselves didn't cost us anything, kind of getting them done was a process. And it's not something that I'm qualified to talk to the warranty company over. I needed somebody to talk on our behalf for that. So they had to determine what was wrong and what caused the problem and how it needed to be repaired.
And I'll add one thing to that. So when we're pulling these numbers together for you guys to consider, and we put 25 there, even though it looks like we're only going to spend 15, we're also looking at 2 years back, 3 years back, 4 years back to try to see what the pattern is. So 15 was actually a low year. You know, there have been years in the past that have been 25, 30. Again, depends on what happens. So, and again, trying to be more on the aggressive side on the expenses, you know,
Rather save
that's,
money than-
that's the number.
Yeah, be
Because this is,
satisfied.
you know, this is your one-time shot to,
And I think 25 going up is smart because Councilmember Dahl mentioned about the roads, and, you know, since we don't have a public works department, if we do end up taking on these roads, the person that I'm going to look to for advice on what needs to be done is probably going to be the engineer, at least for now, and, you know, until we get bigger. And they would determine, you know, what needs to be repaired, and we'd probably have to contract out for those repairs. But so I think 25 is a fair number, but you think of anything
well,
else
just,
we need to
well,
change that for?
no, other than just, again, the budget philosophy is plan for the worst and then manage to the best. So you're not committing to spending any of the money, you're planning so that you have a really conservative view of what your surplus would be,
The worst case scenario.
worst case scenario.
The first thing they tell you at the budget workshops that I've gone to is that no matter what your numbers are, they're going to be wrong. Very rarely do you actually hit them. You know, so you give it your best estimate based on past history and what you know for sure is going to come up, and then the rest of it is just fancy guesswork.
Well, I don't know.
Ray's hit it pretty close.
We don't like to use that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
word,
Ray's hit it really
guesswork.
close.
Educated guesswork.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Item.
Mileage expense, 646. That's just going to be if we travel, and I don't ever put down for going back and forth to Rockwall. You know, I'm not going to charge you for that because I'm likely going to do an errand on my way to somewhere else, so I'm just going to do that. But if we travel and I have to drive to the airport, or if I have to drive to Austin or something like that, we do that IRS mileage rate. So that's going to be true for any staff that travels anywhere.
What is 655?
And council too, for that matter. What is it? I'm sorry.
655 code of ordinance.
When we update the code of ordinances, we have a company that codifies that ordinance. So they take all the changes that council's made. So for instance, we added that chapter 8 recently for all those code-related nuisance types of things. And then any other thing that changes your codes, your code of ordinances, we send those to them, and then they actually incorporate them into the written code. So we'll get a written supplement, but then they also keep current whatever's online. So your online is actually your most current. And then is it once a year, twice a year, we actually get a written supplement where the old comes out and the new comes in. And they coordinate how all that works.
Okay.
I had a question about 700. It shows that you have it earmarked for Klutz Road.
Yes.
I don't recall an agenda item bringing that to our attention.
I think we just talked about it just during our original budget workshop. So Klutz Road, I have put probably the last 2 years, I think this year I paid $30,000 to put dirt on it. And we had that budgeted. We had budgeted money for roads. But we just repaired as needed. But this year we had, I guess, a lot of rain the last year or so, and so lots of stuff washed away. And then we also had a bridge repair out there that needed fixing. So Rockwall typically has the best contract rates, but we can certainly go out in the future and look for better rates. But we contracted with them to put more dirt on, so that was expensive. Well, I talked to them this past year about a more permanent fix because I'm tired of paying $30,000 to put rock on and have it wash away. So they think we've put enough rock on right now that there's a decent base. So they think that we could do like an asphalt, forgot what it's called. Chip seal, that's it, chip seal. And the base that we have would be pretty good, and that would probably keep us from having to do it every single year. That we may go in, and there may be some cracks that we have to fill here and there, potholes that we repaired, but we wouldn't have to go in and dump all that work, rock on it, and then grade it out. So typically, every year, we're dumping tons of rock, and then we're grading it out.
Do we have a roads line item?
It's just under capital.
There are dots under the 700 that, so when we actually hit that, we put it to the road versus something that's not a road.
Okay.
So road does, on the actual financial report, it has its own line.
So this is where, I guess, if you wanted to add money, thinking that Dow or any of those other roads are going to cost us more, that's probably where you'd want to add it here. I did put in another 15 for unplanned events, so if we have to repair.
So is there another program or whatever you've got that does have 700.1? I mean, that we're not seeing?
It's in your financial, yeah. So the budget sort of does lump some things together, but in the financial report that you look at every month, it has more line items on it. But we can certainly add the line items here, like if we had, the only reason we didn't is that we figured out, the entire 55 probably would end up being roads. But we can break them out.
You guys, I've got some big concerns with where we are heading as a community in roads and our possible increased liability with maintenance moving forward. I think we need to bump that number up quite a bit. I don't know what y'all's comfort level is. Again, trying to, as Ray said, plan for the worst. And hopefully that does not come before fruition. Are you guys comfortable with bumping that up to 40? Is that unplanned? We want to be that aggressive.
It's already got 40.
That's just
for Klutz. So that 40 that you have for Klutz, is that the chip seal?
That's the chip seal.
Chip seal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you're saying bump it to 95?
correct. Again, if we don't use it, then great. But my concern is, and again, it may not, this may be premature planning on my, I just have big concerns about.
So do you think within the next year we'll be putting 95,000 into our roads?
I think it's just an unknown right now, so until we get GIS mapping and get things settled with the county, it's just going to be a question mark.
Has there been anything brought to you that we haven't made attention of as far as any sort of maintenance or dilapidated infrastructure that's currently out there right now?
I think you're aware of it all. We have had issues in Sonoma. There is a road maintenance fund for that. I'm concerned that there's not enough in there. The pit administrator tells me it's fine, but considering the repair that we made last year,
It exhausted half of it.
it exhausted half of it. It made me real nervous. And I even hate to bring it up because it's controversial, but those are public roads. And even though the PID maintenance fee is supposed to take care of them, they also pay taxes, city taxes. So if they're public roads, Klutz is a public road, Sparta-Pullen's a public road, Smith is a public road. If they're out of money at some point, or there's just an enormous amount of repairs for some reason or another, I think we're catching up, and I think it's getting better. But we might have to throw money that direction. I know it's controversial, and people say no, it's going to come out of. But if they've only collected so much for the year, that's all they're going to get for the year. So if something unexpected comes up, it's almost like we're going to have to put something down there. And then maybe they make up for it the next year out of that SAP or whatever, but in the meantime, we might have to be out some money.
Does our fund balance policy have an allocation for roads? I'm sorry, I don't remember if it does.
I don't think it does for road. Well, we have money in there, and I think we just put it for unfunded.
It's unappropriated, so you
Yeah.
have it, but it can be used for anything.
I mean, I would suggest that we segregate out, perhaps look at the fund balance policy and segregate out some funds for road maintenance, because it's going to probably cost more than $80,000 for road repairs.
Well, and sooner or later, and I'm not going to say it's going to happen this year, but sooner or later, the folks from Briar Glen, Glen Acres, whatever that subdivision is called, Frontier Trail, Heron Circle, some of those roads that are really crumbling and falling apart, even though they're managing right now, I think sooner or later they're probably going to approach the city and they're going to want us to do some sort of a local PID, a mini PID. And the deal with that usually, and there may be a couple of different ways of doing it, but the ones that I've seen usually require the city to agree to take that on as a public road. And then you do an assessment. You can assess them a percentage, and the city pays a percentage. And then once they're up to par, city standard, then you take them on and they're yours. So I'm not saying that's ideal. I'm not saying that I want it to go that direction. But the reality is some of these roads are so bad that we can't get school buses down them, we can't get trash trucks down them, we can't get emergency vehicles down them. So they're private. And honestly, and I'll tell you this, and I don't know this is proper form to say it in, but I'm not sure we've done the city, from my perspective, a service by doing everything as private roads, because they're great to start with, and then over a 30, 40-year period, they start to deteriorate, and then maybe it's been a great OHOA, and maybe they have money set aside, but we can't control that here at the city. So I can't control what people collect from their HOA. So it may be that like Glen Acres or some of these other places or Frontier that they either never got off the ground or they never got started or they haven't kept up with it over the years, but they don't have any money set aside. So 30 years down the road, it won't be this council, but it'll be somebody else sitting in those seats that's going to have to deal with crumbling roads. And it won't be Glen Acres because it'll be done by then, but it may be Chisholm Crossing or it may be someplace else that's falling apart. And hopefully they'll keep up with it and they'll have money to repair, but you just never know. I'm not picking on Chisholm Crossing, just throughout a subdivision.
Well, I'd really rather not discuss that right now.
But no, it's probably not the best place to discuss it, but it does worry me that we've got all these private roads and someday.
Well, I mean, it's a county-wide issue. Every city deals with this issue.
We just seem to have a lot more private than we do anywhere else I've ever seen. The private roads I've seen in my other cities were usually gated communities. They're usually communities where, they're going to keep the public out completely.
What's there, so what they're paying.
We've done it a little differently here. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it kind of presents some issues that are going to keep coming up over the years.
So what do you guys, do we want to stay with 15 on the unplanned events, or do we want to increase that some?
What are you talking about?
700.
Back to
I
700.
gotcha. So do we want to go to 95? Is that what you're saying?
Again, I'm just throwing that number out. Obviously that's aggressive, and most likely we won't use even a large portion of that. But I think we need to start planning for that, and if we haven't, part of our fund balance
We could address it
policy.
within our fund balance policy instead of putting it as a budget item.
How would that work, right? If we
So the way that works is that you budget to a surplus. And then, just like you'll have some decisions to make at the end of this year. You have a surplus. And then what you can do is you can appropriate that surplus for specific purposes, so that you're doing a budget within a budget. You know now that the overall surplus, you'll look at it and you go, well, how much of it is just free surplus, that we can do for whatever. But then you have categories of appropriated surplus, repair, replace reserves for infrastructure, roads. You've already started that with your fire capital. So
You can get as detailed as you want to on it, or you can leave it kind of generic
Kind of
or
generic.
unplanned. So it's really your choice is how you want to do it.
and there's good and bad to that, because if you leave it unplanned, then it can be used. Other decision makers later on down the road can use it for purposes that maybe in your mind today you had intended for another purpose. So
Of course, the policy can be changed every year.
it can be changed. But what you're really doing when you establish these reserves is you're giving a roadmap to people who come into these seats after you. and saying, okay, this is the decision-making process that previous council used. They had a reason why they set a road repair replace reserve and a fire capital reserve and those kinds of things. So,
And even though we haven't done it this year, I was hoping we would by the time we adopted the budget, but I'm not sure if we're going to be short on time. But I would love to see our financial advisor from Hilltop come in, and maybe Ray and the rest of council, and do a long-term financial plan, the capital improvement plan, the 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, and kind of think about, fire department needs and long-term, when these trucks need to be replaced, have a true replacement schedule for them. There's so much about public safety we don't know yet, so we have some kind of question marks about where that's headed, and we just don't know. But as those kind of fall into place, I think it'll be even more important that we have some sort of a long-range plan, so we're not just stabbing at it.
So, as an example, if let's say we hit this surplus on the 2021 budget, and if all things go like we're planning, then your overall surplus will be $2 million. And then you're saying, was that enough? But then if you begin to break that out, road repair, equipment, all of a sudden those buckets start getting very small.
When we talked about roads for like the unplanned things, I've had a couple of requests this year from residents that, I think now League Road too, but the Klutz sign, the stop signs get knocked down every now and then. Well, the stop sign, TxDOT has been pretty generous. If it touches a state road, that they'll go ahead and put it up, even though it's technically kind of on Klutz or on League. League was the last one knocked down. But the road signs themselves that say Klutz or League, they have a tendency to disappear. We don't know where they go. They just, I don't know. And then there are other ones in town. Poulin is one, the one off Smith. They're really small. I don't know when they were put up, but they probably wouldn't meet standards today. They need to be bigger, and they need to be reflective. And I've had complaints of people that are driving at night, and they say they keep missing their own Smith Road because, they're there before they realize it because there's really no reflective. Right. So we kind of thought maybe that $15,000 might go to us, having to replace some of those road signs. And those I can have made someplace. We probably need to decide what we want them to look like and all, but we can have those made. There's a highway standard for most of the sizes and shapes on those. If they're in an individual neighborhood, they can kind of be a little bit different, but if they're on the main roads, they're kind of all the same. But you can decide on color and reflective material and some other things. Whether you want the city logo on there to show that that's in the city, there's some different looking ones that we can look at. But I kind of think we probably will at least spend a little bit of that $15,000 on some signage, just making it safer. These farm to markets, believe it or not, they're 60 miles an hour. So if you're driving, and especially at night, you're trying to find it, it's really easy to pass one up. And we want our emergency vehicles to be able to find these streets easily when they need to.
So again,
How much you want to put in there, or where you want to put it? Fund balance or line item?
say 25, or do we want to leave it at 15?
What's that 40?
I'm just talking about the unplanned part. Klutz I would leave alone, and it is what it is.
I would just assume leave it, but I'm flexible.
Yeah, I would assume leave it as well, as we've been working through this budget workshop. We've already had 67,000. Take anything away.
Well, we're doing.
Well, I have it penciled in. We'll talk about the calendar at the end of the evening about the rest of the budget adoption process, but I have penciled in to update those financial policies, including the fund balance in September. So I think we could come back, and if that was your wish, we could add an extra fund paragraph
Guys,
just
don't
for
get me wrong,
roads.
I don't want to spend it, but we may not have a choice. That's my concern. And I don't want the city to be scrambling
Yeah.
because we have, now we're responsible with X miles of roads to repair.
Yeah. I don't think that's as bad as we originally thought. So I was concerned about every boundary road, and I'm not sure why the county was, and I hate to say it out loud because maybe now they want to, but when I asked specifically, okay, which roads are your main concern, they listed like 3, and Dow was the main one. The rest of them, for whatever reason, they don't seem to be bothered by. Now, some of them are TxDOT roads, so they're not going to be an issue, but there are some others that are just neighborhood roads that I'm not sure why it doesn't bother them for those roads. Maybe because there's no problem this year.
Yeah.
So maybe next year when there's a problem, it will bother them and they'll approach us about that.
And again, this is, if we do get the roads, it may take a little while. By that time, we're halfway through 21.
I think Dow's going to be your main issue, and I think you're probably looking at some drainage and some maintenance on the sides of the road. I don't know that it's going to be a big overhaul, at least not this year, maybe the following year, but maybe
Yeah,
not
just,
this
I
year.
mean, it does need to be a starred item that we need to really,
So why don't we leave it at 15, but then look at fund balance?
It's a good idea.
All right, so you guys, so where are we now? Yeah, let's take a quick break. It is 8:54. Take a 3-minute break and we'll hit the ground running.
3 minutes.
Public safety and payroll. I did that back.
Yeah. Can I get you anything, Ray?
I'm doing good.
I think there might be some caffeinated products in there, I'm not sure. We can make you a cup of coffee if you need.
That's exactly right, especially for me.
Anybody want to miss it if they have any?
No, I'm good.
Is there?
I'm good.
Life's ever going to go a little more stale.
Beggars can't be choosers. I should have gone to the chiropractor today.
Yeah. So I guess I've got about 45 minutes left. Yeah.
Maybe you're going to go line by line if you have a question about it.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go line by line. I just think we have to do section by section. That'd be good.
So can you move the agenda aside for today, you can make for the special meetings for the
Thursday.
Yeah, that's 13.
What time?
What time? For the special meeting, 6:30?
Well, it's supposed to be 6:30, this is maybe at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, let's just do 6:30 because my road memories.
So Thursday.
Yeah.
It's a special meeting.
On the 13th.
Tonight, we don't have enough for a quorum.
So instead of Tuesday, we're doing Thursday.
Phone's almost dead.
This is the special meeting.
Yes, and the meeting on the 11th will be canceled.
So we're hearing about it.
Yes.
All right, you guys, so let's go ahead and call
13th at 6 p.m.
6:30.
6:30.
6:30. So let's go ahead and call our meeting back to order. It's now at 1 p.m. So I think we're going to go ahead and get the chief to kind of go through his.
He's on his way.
Oh, we got this special meeting organized for the 13th.
It's 6:30?
6:30.
When do you need items for that?
Sooner the better. What do you think, Shelley, Friday at the latest? Well,
Chief, if you
about
don't mind.
Thursday then. Maybe Thursday? Thursday then? How about 10 a.m. on Thursday for anything that needs to be on that agenda?
Thank you, sir. Can I go ahead and submit about the special election being approved?
Individual line items.
Go ahead, sir. Do you want to review it, or how did you want to approach things?
Absolutely.
Go down and then we have questions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, if you would, thank you, sir.
Start with the budget line items, 43001.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? It's our vehicle insurance, equipment insurance, if I'm not mistaken, that includes our station insurance as well. if I'm not mistaken,
I think all insurance for,
For fire.
But it's not mentioned on what we provide, 7962 is what we provide.
7960. He had something up.
Well, are we looking at the overall budget?
We're looking at line item 43001.
Yes, ma'am.
And for liability insurance, it says for the
21.
Well, it says for the 2021 budget, FY 2021 is 7960.
So Chief, would that include like,
Um,
because
Do you have an extra copy of that, Chief?
001 is just liability insurance, so is there something else?
Should, the line that we have for this year's budget shows a total amount of 21,211 for last year's budget. And so I carry that same.
Oh, you can see that on there.
For this year, with understanding that obviously interest rates are picking up. But it's
I don't think you updated it.
previous budget, that line item shows 21,211,
43.
section 430.
Is it combined with any other items?
It's had,
From this yellow?
basis up on the actual insurance part of this, my understanding is all our vehicle insurance, insurance on the properties, equipment, or that's our, what else is that include? Right. 21 to 11, we had a line out last year.
Well,
I'm not sure.
yeah,
You see what we're looking at?
I'm.
Dude, I have a copy of what's shown here, and I have a copy.
Did you get a quote from the insurance agency for this, Chief?
No, so the only thing I did for actually, the title on the 2021 budget was to show, I just carried the number over from the last year's budget, which is the 21.
Okay, well, we actually, we probably had a bad number in the budget for the year before, because we've only ended up spending $7,730 on that, and then we got a note that expected 10% increase, so that's where I got the 7,962.
That line would be easy to reduce that line amount.
Okay, so we're going to leave it the way it is in the budget worksheet then, the published one?
Yeah, I think so.
Chief, what, the radio maintenance, is that the bill that we get from them?
It is as part of our 10-year contract that we pay off portion of the radio
And
units.
that went up this year, this, our line item that went up.
Correct.
14.
It actually goes up to 14,000, and I think in year 5, so we're going to make it peak of about 17,000, then we come back down.
So that's for maintenance, or is that for the radios itself?
It's all part of the radio maintenance contract
Oh, so contract.
for the whole county. That was our, the total contract, and that they broke out our 10-year worth of maintenance fees and fee payment.
Okay.
So that one's a known.
Huh? Yeah. I just thought for maintenance, I'm like,
So Chief, I mean, you don't anticipate any, I know I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball here a little bit, but as far as huge, significant repairs, I mean, do you see anything looming at all, or be okay?
Forecasted, I mean, this year we have had some significant repairs on some of our vehicles. We had tire issues on engine 42, which is two tires. Cost us a couple thousand to purchase the tire. We had those unexpected items come up this year, but I don't foresee any major issues outside of our normal preventative maintenance on our vehicles. That's
So-
why I felt comfortable carrying that number over from last year to 8,000, even though I know this year we're going to have an overreach. But due to COVID and things like that, my training budget hasn't been used hardly any, so I know those numbers will come out throughout the year.
so you're comfortable going from 23 to 8?
Which 43,003?
Yes. For from 23,205 to 8.
Looks like
I don't see the 8. What am I missing?
Oh, on my, again, I put it off the wrong sheet. On my sheet, if you notice the top line there, I made corrections to my line items. And
We have 8 on both plans.
So I'm confused.
And 8, but we
So-
spent 23.
I'm
so-
looking at this,
Yes, ma'am, I'm looking at that now.
and on here you've got 8, on here there's 8, but on 2020 projected, it's 23.
that's
That was the previous budget.
I mean, but he feels comfortable that he's only going to need 8,000?
We just need to flip the money from the liability that you had back over to the,
That actually is, that number, that line item there is
Yeah, the 8's probably,
for you, the wrong sheet.
needs to be looked at.
It happens?
This one is correct. What Ray has put together is actually the correct one, and that's
Okay.
that's where I thought it had printed about it all. I made notes for a couple of these line items for you, so you had an understanding about compliance. Really doesn't explain
Yeah.
what's in compliance.
Right, yeah, that, we had a question mark on that.
We wondered about that.
Yeah, what is,
Same thing with station maintenance and operation. Put it on the existing line item sheet instead of the 2021 promotion.
okay,
So the numbers that Ray has inside the book here are actually the correct numbers.
okay. But this explains what compliance is.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha, that'll help.
So, under 43007, radio maintenance,
That's
our
a
contract is 12, but we're budgeting 14.6.
It keeps going up, so each year it progresses to the more we get to about year 5, we reach a number of things from 16, 17,000, and then we come back down to year 10.
that one's a known.
So that was a number that we have in account. We know that that was our contract 7 years, 12 years ago on maintenance. So we know that's a number.
So that's not only maintenance, but it's the contract also.
Correct.
Should we change the name of that?
Well, no,
Should
can we do a 4307.1 for it being the contract and then,
Well, I think it's all just lumped together.
It's all in one contract, the number, it's all in one.
okay. Okay, so you don't have to like add batteries or anything like that, or?
If we do it monthly for this first year, then we're going to have more, we've had some radio issues, battery failures. We've actually had, multiple damage on a couple of sinks, so that they've actually repaired it, and they've actually just recently replaced some of the radio due to,
But because it's a contract, they pay for it, you don't.
as of right now.
Gotcha. Maybe we could just add contract. to
Yeah,
that.
just relabel it as radio contract block one.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get that right?
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
I'll do
Good
that.
job. Okay.
So I have a real minor thing on item number 418. It says 70, but then it's doubled to 140. Is that
What is it?
That's a formula error.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll correct
That's
that.
the $70.
I know.
Yeah.
Good job.
See,
I-
good job. You've earned your wages.
All right, you guys, other questions for the chief at this point?
Not on this page.
Okay.
I do. On, and this is just on 319, is it 319? No, it's transfer from the fire capital fund. Do we see that? Uh-huh. It's got, the 4055. Where's the other 500 at?
Because we got 4.5 for the fire department, so where is all that accounted?
So we have the On the next page, I have the new fire station budgeted at 4 million.
Right.
Right.
So,
But we got 4.5, so.
yeah, that came in
May.
in this year. So right now, that the 4.5 million is sitting in the fire capital fund.
Okay.
So we'll move it out of the fire capital fund if we're assuming 4 million up for construction, whatever that ends up being. So we're bringing that, that's just how the future would look for like any reserve, right? We have it reserved this year, and we'll move it to the budget in the year we're going to spend the money. So 4 million comes in, and then it's spent down at the bottom. But the 4.5 million is a current year thing that has already happened.
We just estimated when we did the RFQ for the RFQ for the design build, we estimated, I think, was it 3.5 to 3.8, and we just put 4 in to be safe. We figured we could build it for that. We don't know for sure. I mean, that number is going to change.
Sitting in the fire capital reserve.
All of the money is in the fire capital reserve. We just put 4 million in the budget as a estimate what we're going to actually spend.
Okay,
Yes.
that's the budget, okay.
Yes. We were hoping we don't have to spend all that 4.5 million, but we just had to pick a number and go with it. I mean, we don't really know what it's going to come in at.
And why transfer 521,789 from the general fund?
That's what balances the public safety budget. So the general fund has to contribute 521,789 to zero out the public safety budget. That's how much of the revenue from the general fund you'll need
Page 8 of
to pay for it.
118.
Or you could show, the other way to show it is not to put that number there and show that as the deficit for the public safety fund. That's the same number that's on line 530 of the general fund.
That's what I was looking for.
930,
430.
430. General deficit fund. So I guess I don't understand.
So the public safety operations don't have enough revenue to pay for all of their expenses. So the general fund has to pick up the deficit. So the budget is what the general fund needs to spend in order to fund fire department operations. So the budget for the fire department or the public safety fund, the budget is surplus deficit is zero. Because the general fund is going to kick in the money to pay for the rest of the operations.
Kind of, yeah. Like the volunteer, we paid them $365 or something like that a year. Is that right? So we're paying, now we're up to 500.
That's right.
There is a slide that kind of shows, can you switch to that fire slide then and now? There we go. That kind of shows how things have changed a little bit.
Is this in the packet?
No, that's just, you'll request tomorrow, I'll send you the PowerPoint.
Yeah, where was it?
That's a good slide, we can all have a copy of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't finish it until just before the meeting, so I'll be happy to give it to you.
The biggest part of the increase, obviously, is the reduction in the SAFER grant.
Yeah. Safer grant and then the new vehicle.
Right.
So you guys have any questions or comments on that?
Line on that.
The remainder of the chief's budget there?
Yeah, the vehicle chief on the purchase of the $55,000 vehicle wasn't impacted.
The thought process behind the council decided to move forward with a code enforcement position that we could strip down and clean up the existing vehicle now, and then leave it down to the code enforcement officer, things like that, that don't want to be incurred, and the person that we replace that.
And on where it says under revenue transfer, the 4 million is from the check, but the 55 is coming from where?
Would come before council requested to spend out of current capital replacement funds in place now.
Okay. So it didn't come from the textile?
Correct.
Okay.
You put, I think it was last year, we added 350,000 about to the fire capital fund balance.
If you look at, on your
The
first
station
page,
funds are now in there as well.
the fire capital fund has $4.88 million in it.
Oh, great.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of the discussion on the new fire truck kind of goes into the code enforcement thing. I think I personally would prefer to not purchase the $55,000 vehicle. And I also would prefer to go part-time on code enforcement and then purchase a cheaper vehicle for the code enforcement. But that's down the road, so I think we need to deal first with the purchase of the $55,000 vehicle.
But you want to do, did you say that you wanted to do lawn maintenance separately from the code enforcement position, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my opinion. For code enforcement, I'd rather see what our workload is with the code enforcement and start part-time before we go full-time, because full-time will be like $55,000, but you pay all the benefit package. If we go part-time, we wouldn't have to do that. But if we determine next year this time, we could gainfully employ a code enforcement officer full-time, then I think we would have better metrics, because we would get a report from the code enforcement officer as to what he would be doing.
Well, and not only that, but you hire, in my opinion, if you hire a full-time person and it goes to, we don't need him as much because, it's harder to let go or to bump him down to part-time. Does that make sense?
Well, that's why we threw in the lawn care duties, because we figured there would be some times that were less busy.
Yeah, but I don't,
Does that position exist of finding a part-time code enforcement person?
that's willing to do lawn work?
I mean, we just put it in the job description. If somebody wanted it, they'd apply. If not, I mean, I can't guarantee that.
We're going to need somebody that's going to be able to carry a gun, is that correct?
Right.
Or no?
No,
I don't
not for
know.
code.
No?
That's a scary thought, actually.
I'm like, I don't know.
Team closed. Code enforcement back.
I don't need a crazy Barney Fife out there or
I
anything,
know, right? That's why I was like, I'm not so sure.
That's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I actually like the part-time, just to test it out. That way we're not having.
What's part-time? How many days a week?
20 hours a week.
I don't know.
I'm just asking.
I mean, that's to me what part-time is.
Ask Chief, what do you think it's going to take to, I mean, because you've been doing this for a little bit, right? So what do you think it would take?
Requirement to cover, what is the TMI's requirement, the definition of part-time? So you don't have to add them, do you know?
Yes, it's 1,000 hours a year. They work more, and technically Judy's right there on, but it's regular, which you expect somebody to work, but if they expect it to work over 1,000, you're supposed to add them.
So you need to, because 20 hours a week would go over that.
Okay. Is it? That'd be 10.
That'd be 1,040.
Do you subtract out like the vacation time out of there or anything, or does that matter?
But I would
It
much
just depends
rather,
on,
I
like, if
mean,
he's
just in
stepping
my
down,
opinion,
what he's
bump
getting
somebody
paid
up than take
for
it down.
vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have 20. So
I
if
mean,
you're
you know, not only that,
20
but we're
hours a
going to
week,
save
that
on
matters.
the
I'm gonna
insurance,
have to add Judy then.
you know, all of that to see if we really
So
need
you
it.
are decrease your hours.
I don't know, that's just my opinion. I would much rather bring somebody on, you
They need
know,
to
as a
know.
full-time than I would go, well, you know what, you've done a great job, but.
And let me say something to that council. Having part-time, you now definitely have two. Still, you're still in place. You have two able code enforcement officers. So in the beginning, this is you have to take.
Well, that would be my concern is if that code enforcement person is only working Thursdays and Fridays, what if we have a plan on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Well, we were looking at what's going to be best for the hours that might come in. You know, this depends on what the enforcement action is going to be, or what the compliance issue may be, which may go. And then when we come in, it's no more early, it's no longer really going forward in the evening. So, you know, once we get into it, we can determine that you can have up to 30, you can work 32 hours if I'm not mistaken, as a part-time employee without receiving any
Benefits.
benefits.
Well, wait, I think it's 30 hours as far as benefits, but TMRS is different, and Ray and I were just talking about it, and for TMRS, if you work over 1,000 hours regularly, you actually have to,
In 1 year, correct?
yes, and we were just now looking at Judy's numbers, and she's worked additional hours this year, which actually is going to throw her over, and we probably need to adjust that as well.
Yes, I mean, if we had, Chief, if you're there to kind of supplement that role, and I think having somebody part-time initially is a good plan.
If you bump them to 30 hours, then we, by our personnel policy, you have to give them benefits if it's 30. If you keep them under 30, then we don't give them health and dental.
If you're working 25 hours a week, you're working 5 hours a day, it's a pretty good work day. You can get a lot done.
And you may have somebody, because it's part-time and it's not going to pay benefits, you may have trouble getting somebody to take it. Just because of the benefits. Yeah, you
We
can.
have nothing now.
You
so
can.
That's cheap, trying to do it.
To balance it off.
Yeah.
First thing to do is say no, until they ask.
Okay, so just to be clear, so see if we're all in consensus here. So going to take out the new chief vehicle. You want to purchase a new or used, I mean, what do you want to budget for that?
Okay, guys, how much is a pickup?
Yeah, I don't know.
Pickup, 20,000?
20.
Plain pickup, and you can put slides and put signs in.
Yeah, I'd like to see a.
It's going to get beat up. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
code
it
vehicle.
doesn't have to be brand spanking new. It's
So
going to
it's-
be.
That's why we thought we'd repurpose the other one.
For sale?
All the lights, I mean, we say for safety purposes, we put in this.
It's got to have signage on it
Yeah, we
and
can get the
identify.
signs.
Not just the signage, but possibly some lights that have to have something, so there's something on the city, they can turn on their emergency lights to let people know that
Stop.
if they stop on the side of the road, pick up, check, a lot of your trash goes in the ditch.
Can you buy a truck for $20,000? I
Yeah.
haven't seen a truck for $20,000.
Has a 10 no repairs a year.
I'm a little worried that 20 might not be enough for a vehicle. I haven't seen a vehicle under 20 grand in a long time.
I think 25 is,
To give you an idea, the vehicle we're talking about is either a four-door pickup truck, but that's a fully loaded out emergency vehicle for that price. It's all bells and whistles on it, camera system, lights, everything.
If this person's part-time, I mean,
This is just your
It's just here. They'll be parked here.
When it's not here, it's city vehicle.
I got a question about the transfer from the fire capital fund, the 4 mil portion of it. Would it be better to leave that in the fire capital fund until we know what the cost of the building is actually going to be? And then make an amendment in the budget to move the funds that are needed to allocate to that project?
We're not going to move the
Fire
funds.
right now.
I mean, it's moved on paper that we've budgeted for it, but we're not actually going to move any funds anywhere. It's going to stay in that fund and draw interest until the time that we have to pay out. And what we thought we'd
It's
do,
just The line item says transfer from fire capital fund. So on this document that I'm looking in front of me, it actually is moving.
On paper.
as we pay for it, so it'll stay in the fund balance fund, its own little separate fund, and then we'll open up a new account at Alliance Bank, and as we need money, we'll draw, I don't know how much at a time, but we'll put enough in the Alliance Bank, new bank account, that we can pay out monthly as we're billed, because we're not going to have to pay a $4 million, fee or whatever it ends up being, all at once.
I mean, it just, from this document, this work.
Yeah, I think it's just the language the way it is. We have to still show it as budgeted that we're going to spend the funds. We still have to show that we're going to spend those funds.
Yeah, just the language says everything's going to move over to it's going to shift out of that long, so if we could get that changed.
Changed. What are we
I think
changing?
he just doesn't like the way it's worded from the transfer, or for new station 55 new, the transfer from fire capital fund. How do you think we should show it?
So a fund isn't a bank account.
Yeah, no, I know.
you don't like a transfer part.
I don't want to transfer part.
Can you call them a
It's not actually, I don't see why we're calling it a transfer from the capital, from the, well, when it's not actually not moving, it's staying there.
Well, it will
It
move.
will move.
Will all of it move next year?
Over the course of the build. We're just not going to move it all at once. We're going to move it as we need it.
Just because of the interest.
Yeah, there's just no reason to put $4 million in a zero interest bearing account over it.
Smart.
I don't know how else to represent that. I think
I don't think we have a lot of leeway.
it has to be shown a certain way because of the way the government accounting works.
Yeah, government accounting standards dictates how we word that. And so you've got a fund that you've labeled fire capital, and you're transferring that to the public safety fund. So I could look for other wording, but you've got to, again, we're not talking bank accounts, we're talking about fund accounting. So you've got this fund sitting here with that name on it, and now you're going to spend it through your public safety budget. So you're transferring it from one fund to
It's
another.
an accounting term, which is
Well, you've got to show where the money comes from, you've got to show where the money goes.
We have some flexibility here, but on the audit report, that's how it will show.
we'll just leave, we don't want to confuse the matter further.
Yeah.
So any unused funds would be automatically retransferred back into the fund capital fund.
Well, they wouldn't transfer to start with. We're just going to take out what we need as we need it. So we'll make sure that Alliance has enough in there so that when the project manager and the chief and I sign off on draws as they request funding, the construction and the design group, once those are approved, yes, you've done your job, you've done all the things that you've actually billed us for, we'll write a check for that. But that's not all going to be that $4 million all at once, or whatever the price of the station is that we don't even really know what it is exactly, other than it has to be under 4.5. But we'll move over little bits of that at a time. We just don't want to move it all at once. But it needs to be shown on the budget, on the big overall budget, which is what this spreadsheet is.
652, why is the appreciation doubled?
I'm looking for
Which one are you, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, staff
Staff
appreciation.
appreciation for, is it 652? I think that's what that
Yes.
says. It's gone from 463 to 800.
There wasn't any, I don't think there was any real thought to that. It's just that, that was just really just putting a number in. There wasn't any backup to support that.
Well, I think last year we did have a Christmas party, and we invited council. I think one person from council came. But I think we were just budgeting to make sure that, it started out as a fire department Christmas party, and then it kind of turned into an all-city staff and council party. And I think we were just putting enough money in there to make sure that we accommodated that this coming year. And we don't know exactly when or where, even if we'll exactly have it yet. But we had to put an amount in there, assuming that we would.
Last year we had it,
It was barbecue, and then people brought their own gifts and did a gift exchange.
Yeah, I'm good. I just didn't know why it was doubled.
I think just because we just don't know, it's not planned yet. I think it's just an estimate.
What else you
I don't have anything else on public.
Oh, I do. Where is AGCM coming out of?
It will come out of that $4 million for the station.
Can we get like that kind of a line item type thing going, or?
I think we will
Once all the money starts to be spent,
Yeah,
there'll be a lot of line items.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'd like to see it all itemized out
Yeah.
on the fire station bill.
Any other questions? Good. Good.
I think one of the last things in the budget we have to talk is the payroll issues. And I don't know how to segregate that out between executive session.
Well, it can't be executive unless you're talking about a particular person, and unless you're doing an evaluation, I don't think you'd want to do that. So when we get to October, November, and we do evaluations, then it would be appropriate, I think, to go back in executive session. Here, all we've done is we did build in an increase. That doesn't mean you have to give the increase. So when Chief evaluates his people, he would determine, based on that 3 to 5% that's built in, I think there's an average of 4, whether someone is going to get that merit raise or not, based on how long they've been there, and I don't know, Chief, help me out, whatever would qualify for that increase. Probably half of them haven't been there long enough to get an increase, so I think
I was going to ask the same thing. On your captains, you've got 3 captains. When were they all put as captains? Like what date? Okay, so they've been captains since
October 2018.
Yeah, now theirs is different because what's proposed in there is actually an adjustment and not a raise. It's more of the salary we felt is not comparable to the surrounding cities. It's not close. And if he is away because he doesn't have an assistant chief, those captains have to take over those leadership duties.
Okay.
So they have responsibilities that are additional to the regular firefighters. So it's more of an adjustment, not necessarily a raise for them.
So you're down to just 2 captains right now? Just right now? Okay. And then the new firefighter, is he one of the 4 that are on here, listed on here? Do you have that?
You have 3 captains and 3 full-time positions, which you're
Okay, because there's 4.
That's the part-time. That's
Oh, these are
78,000,
part-timers.
the
Ah,
compilation
lost my
of
internet.
part-timers.
Okay. Okay. Do we have to do this now, or can we do it another day, or?
But I think we should discuss the TMR. Can we just go through the TMR thing, since that's pretty much a policy thing?
Where's this at?
That's the TMR retirement thing. It's basically a yes or no. We want to go up to the 7%, 2 to 1. Because I see that as a real benefit for retention.
Yeah, I like the 7%.
I mean, I would think
So-
that would be more important than a pay raise.
I'll agree with you there. I think that
It'll benefit them
that we
more.
need to, we've already had one person leave because for a number of, for whatever reason, I'm not sure financial was part of that equation, so we need to.
I think we have to invest, tell them that we're investing in them for the
Correct.
long term.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I had my head in something else. What are we going? We're 2 to 1, or?
Yes, the 7% too. But I
Okay.
would like to revisit at some point the pay raise.
Okay.
and adjustments.
So, just so we're clear on what's in there, if it's a council appointee, you all decide who gets raises or not. So,
Right.
I can't remember if we did them in October. I think it really depends on our anniversary time periods and maybe just a year from the last one, I can't remember. But October, November, you all decide that. So, when you do my evaluation, you'll have a form, you'll talk about it, I won't be in there, and then you'll decide that. And then you'll do the same thing for chief. Now, I'll fill out part of his review, because that's just kind of the way we have it set up, but you have the ultimate decision whether or not you want to provide a raise or you don't want to provide a raise. And the same thing would go with Shelley. I think Shelley, has it not been quite a year, hasn't, for your full-time position? So I think we figured half a year for her because of just the timing of things. But again, it's up to you to, we budgeted so that it could happen, but it doesn't mean it has to happen. So that's why it's kind of set up that way.
I mean, I understand the need to increase the captains based on the fact that looking at some of the other cities, they pay their captains between 79 and 101,000. And we're paying 67, or would be paying 67.
We're paying a lot less right now.
Right.
Right, but
They're
what's
still going to be
proposed?
All in,
underpaid
they're all in their
compared to
67.
their counterparts. Now, I don't know if they supervise, if their counterparts supervise less people, because they're really only supervising, one other person with that job.
Based on our, we're not that extreme, 70,000, that's not really bad. We're currently paying 49,000, we're looking to get up to around the
67.
67.
Well, once you pass their benefits.
That's including the benefits, but I think just getting up to around the 54, 55 mark is the base of the benefits, so roughly 53 to 33, just doing that little amount.
I just,
We aren't going to, we're not trying to get everybody with Dallas or whatever, or all in Richardson or Rockall, larger cities that are going to battle with us, so we're looking at some of the smaller cities, it's anywhere between 55 and 65 in those categories. They do take on the line of duties as well, daily operation.
I just see that 8.5% pretty hefty price adjustment.
Right, and it was put there for council, again, that's, I'm shooting the moon on that, if it's approved, but obviously understand the council got some decisions to make, and increasing the TMRS is a big plus.
Yeah.
For all employees, and then council decides, we're not going to make it, we'll do 3, we're going to have, whatever.
Now, the TMRS is huge. Now, yeah, that is huge. Now, those of us that are a little older really appreciate it because we see retirement, maybe not tomorrow, but 10 years or so,
It's there, it's
10, 12 years.
Oh, you like
The ones in their
it.
20s over at the fire department, they're going to have a harder time with it.
Yeah.
Because to them, it's 2% more out of their paycheck. So that's kind of where we were with the raises is, okay, well, maybe we'll give them enough to kind of cover that. Now, the captains is more, but it would kind of cover that, because they may not see the long-term as much as those of us that are a little
I mean, I
older.
think we need to decide tonight if we like that 8%, if we want to do it. I think that would be our last decision. Mayor Pro Tem.
I like the 2% is what I have down.
2?
2 is what I have down. What do you guys?
I do want a budget. Again, in today's world with everybody's, cost of living and that sort of thing, I hate to be overly aggressive on that number right now. Not saying that they don't deserve it.
No, absolutely not. That's not.
I was, in my head, I was thinking foolish.
And they see that, correct me if I'm wrong, but just looking at the basic cost of living in our cities around about
Yeah, the COLA for most cities this year was 2.5.
2.5%.
That doesn't mean that everybody's given them, but that, when you look at the adjustments, that's what the average has been. Okay, so on the 2%, are we looking at the overall for everyone, or,
Well, we've already got the firefighters at 2%.
okay, so fires at 2,
I mean,
not the captains, but just what are we doing with the captains?
that's what we're talking about. We haven't decided.
Oh, 2% for the captains?
I said 2, Nathan said 4. Trudy said 2. What do you say, Will?
Where you at, Will?
So we're talking about their adjustment, right? Not a merit raise, but just an adjustment?
I was at 2. But, because I feel like we're offsetting that with the additional, the benefits package.
Additional things. So the average around the other cities has been 2.5.
That's the COLA, the cost of living, is what I'm getting is 2.5. Now, it doesn't mean every city's going to get it, but they recognize that that's the COLA.
Other cities are going 2.5. So I already
Well, if we do that, we should do the, I know this sounds crazy, but should we do the firefighters at 2.5 as well? I'm talking about the captains.
I think you can do what you want, but I think what Chief was trying, and he can jump in here if he wants to, but I think what he was trying to do is to create a bit more of a gap between the firefighter level and the captain level. So if everybody gets a 2.5, then there's really not a difference, other than,
Oh, I got it.
okay. Good, because I don't know if I could explain it again. Okay, so are we leaving, everybody's 2.5, or what are we doing?
I say firefighters at 2, and then captains at 2.5.
Yeah. And then we'll talk executive session about the actual employees.
Okay, so are we going to leave the number in there for now, though, just so we have a placeholder, or?
Let's leave the 2 where it's at, but then the 844, 843, and 842, move those to 2.5. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, for the rest of them, for the,
Yeah, for the captain.
well, for administration and chief, you don't have to tell me what you're going to give them for a raise. I just need to know what number to put in here for now as a placeholder. Do we leave it, or do you want to reduce it?
Can we leave it for now until or do you want to hash it out now?
I mean, all you've done, I wouldn't talk about a particular employee. I mean, obviously, we know who the,
But we kind of are. And that's
well,
Yeah.
and it makes it
It's
tough.
kinda-
I think until you do evaluations, I don't know that you can really decide tonight if you want to give somebody a merit increase or not. All I'm asking is, do you want to fund it in the budget so that you have that option, that it's there for you? You don't have to for those individuals that your appointees.
Well, the code enforcement officer, he's gone.
Well, he's half, right?
Yeah, he's half, so I don't know what that would be, so 50%.
Well,
I'd like to leave it as is for right now.
Okay.
Leave it.
You're good. I think so. Just because I'd hate to throw a number out there right now and then it get lost and we want to up it and we didn't do it, so.
well, I know, but I'm going to just be sorry, Nathan, but the 4% for the staff and only 2.5% for the workers is, I don't think, a great impression to make on the public.
Yeah, but we're not, we're going to go into exact on everybody but one, right?
You'll have Shelley and Chief and myself, and you can decide individually what you want to do with that when you do evaluations.
So all I see that we have left is city admin, the administrative assistant, which is who?
Okay, that's Judy, and actually on hers, I will make a stand on that one. She's underpaid.
Okay, but what I'm saying though, and then you've got city secretary, which is Shelley, and then we've got chief. So the only person that we are not making a decision on right now, and that's Judy, right? Because the rest of it will go into exec. We'll talk about it in exec.
Yes.
Well, and can
So-
we not just budget what it is right now? I don't know, or just put 0, and then whatever we give them will be better than. I don't know what
Right now,
answer
they
you
can get
guys
up
are
to
looking for.
4%. Right now, they can get up to 4 for administrator, assistant, and chief. And then city secretary can get up to 2.67.
Yeah, that's just based on the time she had in the full-time position.
So we can either decrease the amount, the max amount, or leave it as it is, and then when the appraisers are done, we can say, all right, you're getting this amount for your appraisal. But it's not going to go above 4% as it is written.
Okay. Go with 4%.
I know what number I want, but I don't know what everybody else wants, and I'm not even.
I would like to just go with the same 2.5% as we did for the captains.
Okay. Still 2.5. True.
I'm good, 2.5. And we've got the city secretary still at 267?
Yes.
That would be adjusted accordingly, I guess.
You guys still talking about CLMLS?
No, sir. We are talking about the administration and the fire department percentages.
Salaries.
So.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, are we
What else
done?
you guys?
That's it for now?
Hang on a second, let me just double check my checklist. Shelley, can you change to that calendar? Oh, actually, the fee and then the calendar. Click the PowerPoint thing, the button.
Okay, so you guys have next Thursday at 6:30.
Okay, back one. So on the fee schedule, if you'll just back up one. Go back one, if you would. Okay, on the fee schedule here, I'm just looking for confirmation. So you previously talked about these adjustments. The proposed rate, like for sewer, that's just based on that utility fee study that we did last year. So that's just kind of going to go into effect as it was scheduled. The only thing I had any concerns on was the pool permit, and you can do what you want on it. I'm fine with it the way it is. I just wanted you to see the overall impact. Just if we looked at the pool permits that we did this year, if we talked about lowering it from 500 down to 200, and I just wanted you to, it doesn't sound like much just for an individual permit, but due to the volume of permits, that's the amount, that 9,300 would have been the overall impact of reducing that pool permit fee. So I just want to make sure we're still good with that.
Surrounding communities, though, right?
It is, but I will tell you up front that none of our fees are really aligned just with everybody else's. So because, we're a little bit heavy on our building permits overall. And that's a revenue source for us. So I just want to make sure that you saw the impact of the fee, like when you look at it over the course of a year.
Well, we also have a lower tax rate,
You do.
so now higher rate.
Well, it also makes,
The pool is a luxury.
yeah, it is. You're gonna pay for it. Can you send this, all of this to us?
Yeah, I'll send you the PowerPoint. I didn't finish it until right before the meeting, so but I'll send it to you.
Yeah, and then that way we can just look it over.
Sure. So for now, do you want to plan on doing the decrease? I just need to know what to bring back to you for a master fee schedule if you want it to just confirm one way or the other, or I guess you can wait on it in another meeting if you want. We can look at it again.
I'd rather wait on it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's wait on it just because
Okay.
Nathan's tired, we're all tired.
Okay, we do need to address it sometime in September before the new budget year goes into effect. Okay, and then if you'll go to the next slide, Shelley, the last one for the evening. Okay, I'm sorry, one more. There you go. Okay, so this just is the revised budget and tax rate adoption calendar. So tonight was that August 4th meeting, obviously. August 11th, I can't get a quorum, so it looks like, are we doing the 13th? Is that what we decided?
Yes.
Okay.
6:30.
Okay.
At 6:30.
And then the rest of this is just on here for your benefit to see why these dates are what they are. So, okay, at that 13th meeting, you'll be determining the maximum proposed tax rate for noticing purposes. And you can go down from there, but you can't go up once we advertise it. So that's what you'll have to decide. And a lot of people think it's set in stone when that happens. You can go down, you just can't go up. So you just want to make sure that whatever you put down there on that evening is going to be enough. And then I think the rest of it is just kind of self-explanatory, and I'll send it out to you. But the way it's timed is because you have to start with that end budget adoption date in mind, which is the 22nd. It's the last regular meeting that we could adopt. And then you have to go backwards when you plan your public hearings. And then because our paper only publishes, once a week, we have kind of some constraints on that schedule. So I just kind of wanted to explain why the dates are what they are. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, I guess we're good for the night.
Comments at all? Sorry about that. So, this as far as closing out the meeting, do I need to make any changes?
There's no official action. What we'll do is, based on your comments tonight, we'll clean up the budget, and then at the next meeting, and it'll actually be the 13th, we'll bring it back to you so that you can see what that looks like, and then from there, we'll need to talk about tax rate. We didn't really talk about tax rate tonight so much, but we'll need to kind of talk heavy on tax rate on that meeting.
Okay.
I sure appreciate the work that you two did. That's been very, very thorough.
You're welcome. I don't know what Ray's availability is, or if you want him here for the 13th or not. And I don't know if he can be here for that date, so I think we just need to give him notice if we'd like to invite him.
See that agenda.
Okay. I don't know what you're, if that's possible.
I don't have any idea what my calendar
Okay.
is, but I'll do, if I'm needed, I'll do my best to be here.
Okay. He's done the tax rate scenario, so we can kind of see how the revenue shifts so he may not need to be here. Okay.
All right, you guys, so at 9:58, this meeting is adjourned.
If you keep us going on.
Yeah.